Hi, Elena.
It's so great to see you again. Hello, hello.
How are you? I'm very
Hi.
happy that you're on board.
Thank you so much for your support. That means a great deal to me. I'm so grateful. Thank you. I want
Uh,
to
we
hear, how did your lecture go? Did you have a lecture with the Bulgarian organization Move BG?
No, they stepped out. It
They
didn't
said,
work. For some reason, they didn't get back to me.
really? Oh,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
that is very pathetic. I'm very sad to hear that. I'll have to follow up and find out what happened, why they didn't get
I'm
back to you.
still I'm still interested in I get the funding and I will still be interested coming to your country.
Hello
We have to
everyone.
organize something.
Yeah. And Wilbert didn't work either.
Oh,
Hello.
but you had the connection. He didn't respond to you.
No. Also,
Wow.
his co-fellows didn't. I really wanted to have a Zoom documented discussion on AI and consciousness with him
Oh,
because I got
Hello.
involved in this debate, and it would be a wonderful document to get Ken's view on it.
I wonder if he's very unwell and that's the reason they're not responding. I think I mentioned that to you because you did
Yeah,
have the
yeah,
right contact
yeah,
eventually.
yeah. Yeah,
Excuse me, I'm
yeah.
going to go get a glass of water for the session.
Yeah.
Hello everyone. Welcome to the WAAS 65 conference. We are waiting for the main speaker. We'll give her a few more minutes and we'll start.
Okay, I'm back. The peace offensive was carrying over, and that's why people haven't come yet.
We are waiting for the some of the speakers. We'll start in 2
I,
minutes.
Okay. So, Stephen, you going to moderate?
no, 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 no. Mila is moderating.
Yeah, I know she was supposed to be, but you wrote on her behalf, so I thought maybe you are helping out. No, she's
No,
in
no,
the
no.
session.
Hello, Lawrence. Nice to see you after all these years. Wonderful.
You muted, Lawrence.
You're muted.
Thank you. What I said was, I saw your name in there, Stefan. I was so excited. It's been way too long.
Yeah, it's been way too long. Yeah, 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 yeah. We should catch up on the finance issue, which is the hottest topic for me ever since. Still, it still is. It hasn't changed.
I cannot wait because I have some things that I have a I have a book coming out this fall, and I have uh, a theory in there that I've been thinking about making sure I get you engaged with and get your minds on. So,
Yeah, yeah. I can send you my last books just came out 2 weeks ago, and I have wonderful responses. I'm blown away. Really, I'm really blown away.
oh, that's
I
fabulous. I
just
would
came back.
love to read it.
Send me an email. I send you a link to all the stuff.
Okay, perfect. That sounds fabulous. I'm actually out at sea right now because I spent the last month rewriting from my publisher from what I thought was going to be completely done. So this is my little getaway for about 5 days out at sea. So I'm
Nice.
Good
calling
to
you
see
from the
you
middle of the
all.
Gulf.
Good to see you all, friends.
Hi,
I
Mila.
just want to notify you that I just got off of one session before this to get into this one, and they still haven't finished. I left to make sure that I'm here as soon as possible, and also to let you know that Pavel just messaged us, and he said that he might be slightly delayed, but that he will join us, which is all good because we have plenty to talk about. I want to say hello to all of you. I think the recording is on, and so that I can actually relax and not to have to take notes. We will see how many participants. We currently have 23 participants, and I'm really hoping that today's conversation would be indeed that, a dialogue on this topic, in which you share your own experiences and your own solution proposals, but that we make sure we include the perspectives, the questions, and suggestions from the audience, because if we have this many people in this collective, we should not cut ourselves off from the resources that are offering themselves to us today. So welcome everybody, the panelists and our attendees online. I am Mila Popovic, and I am a fellow and trustee of the World Academy of Art and Science, and currently appointed Director General at the Government of Montenegro, leading a new institution that's called Directorate for Interculturalism at the Ministry of Human Rights, Human and Minority Rights. I am mentioning that because you can imagine that being an independent academic, artist, and activist prior to taking on this role, I was focused exactly on the topic of today. How do we indeed activate a global social transformation? And because of that, I took on the role in the government, changing hats and trying to build bridges between the civic engagement and the governance policies. So this in and of itself is introduction of myself, along with an introduction of a pathway, if you will, a methodology, a personal strategy that I took on as a professional to see how I can build bridges and how I can, from different registers of society and different registers of impact, I can in fact connect initiatives and this impulse towards social transformation. So what I would like to do is to quickly set a stage for this conversation, where I would like to paint a quick picture of the state of affairs, if you will, and the state of arts, if you will, in conjunction in the world. On the one hand, as everything that has been discussed earlier, that is a threat to our peace, personal and collective, has been a convergence of existential risks. And we don't need to number them now here. We all know what they are. But the point is that they are not a list. They are converging phenomena that are multiplying and accelerating and intensifying the effect of each other. That's a key thing to think about. On the other hand, we have the convergence of technological advance, scientific discoveries and technological advance. And I will mention them as different grades of AI, as synthetic biology, mixing of species, as nanotechnology, as also longevity studies and transhumanism. Again, discoveries and advents that are in convergence, multiplying, intensifying, and accelerating their effects. So between those two, what I have called before the Scylla and Charybdis of our own development and of our own labor of our minds, to hearken back to what Einstein was saying, with that the fruit of our labor of scientific discovery should be the benefit and the boon and the blessing of humanity, and not the curse and the destruction of humanity. Hearkening back to what was shared with us 65 years ago, and what we started with in the Academy, the foundational philosophy, vision, and values of the Academy is to call to social responsibility of science at the crossroads, historical crossroads of Cold War and possibility of nuclear war. We are again today at the civilizational planetary beings, as global citizens, we are again at the crossroads of to be or not to be. Between these two convergences, what I am claiming is everything rests on social cohesion, trust, universal human rights and responsibilities, and universal humanistic values to ethically guide the scientific and technological advance to solve our existential risks in order for us to create a new social contract of values that will determine the price and worth and value of everything, and that will guide the new paradigm of human development. In other words, what we need is the aesthetic, ethical, and ecological code to guide our technological advance, to engender, in other words, the social transformation that will unavoidably be a cultural transformation, to guide a culture that will guide that transformation for us to utilize and engage the evolutionary potential of technology to create this beneficial, truly progressive, truly inclusive new paradigm of human development. From there, I would like to, I have already shared with you the question on how we can utilize, engage the evolutionary potential of technology to, in other words, engender a new culture, or in reverse also in a two-way looping back effect of creation. What kind of culture do we need to create in order to guide the evolutionary potential of technology to engender and enact and envision global social transformation? Big question, but I know that every single one of you has already worked on this, has already generated initiatives, strategies, pathways to do this. So I'm kindly asking you to share with us your experiences, to share initiatives, solutions on how we can propel and engage a cultural shift that needs to happen for social transformation. Towards that goal, should I say, I would like to invite first Elena to speak, and then we'll take a full round of insight and engage the audience.
Thank you. I can see I'm already unmuted. It really is a very big question that is being asked. But as somebody who has been trying to translate social science into praxis on the ground for 35 years now, I like to stay away from big words and really become very concrete in trying to address your big and the panel's big question. So for me, as the panel says, the long, slow process of subconscious evolution through millennia will no longer suffice. It is the conscious knowledge of the collective evolutionary process that is the key ingredient in the response to our rapidly deepening global turbulence. The conscious knowledge of the collective evolutionary process. Let's be very clear, such knowledge not only does not currently exist in our educational system, but it requires significant cognitive and emotional developmental shift in ordinary people, which needs to be both explained, cultivated, and then systematically supported. So if we are serious about cultivating peace on the ground, we have no less than that challenge in front of us. And as it was mentioned very clearly and beautifully on the first panel yesterday, it is the internal crisis that we have to resolve. What does that mean? Well, we know very well that our collective cultures right now vacillate between power and control, conformity, and achievement and prosperity, very materialistically understood. And there is a clash between these different cultures, but none of them actually are able to speak to or try to speak to the evolutionary process that we're in. So what is really needed here? There's so much talk about technology now, but I'd like to keep it simple. Technology can significantly enable the cognitive and emotional developmental shift needed by supporting the massive spread of online courses which educate people in every profession and at every educational level on the root causes and drivers of global turbulence, and also, and even more importantly, on the dynamic interdependence between the social, economic, and biosphere problems that every human is experiencing right now. So this is a systemic and global educational endeavor that can do what Stephen Hartman was speaking about as founding executive director of Bridges Sustainability Coalition yesterday, when he said what is most needed is feeding processes that build agency and empowerment. But these processes require a systematic educational intervention because, again, I didn't speak much about my background, but my background is in adult development and in consciousness development. And I know that these things don't just happen. They have to be educated, they have to be cultivated, they have to be supported. So to the extent that ordinary people grasp this dynamic interdependence between the social, the natural, and economics as well, they also develop competencies and skills to participate in creating the new and more humane entities and organizational structures that will assist conscious social evolution. And let's face it, currently, no citizen and no politician is actually prepared to know how to face the dizzying force of the emergent global transformation. There's no training for that. People are not prepared. We talk about the degradation of political leadership, but the reality is that the evolutionary force is gaining momentum so rapidly that people are really not prepared to deal with it so well. Hence the role of a vast-scale transdisciplinary educational campaign that needs to be recognized and urgently responded to. And I'd like to be brief here to allow for time for discussion. So as a very quick example, just wanted to share that, as some of you know, I am a new fellow of the World Academy, but I have worked with the Academy for a couple of years now and have created in Sofia, Bulgaria, a transdisciplinary institute for consciousness, society, and well-being, which is trying to do exactly that, to overcome the siloed academic and other education that is still the reality and the standard, and to develop institute courses that engage professionals from every public and private sphere and exploring the inner and outer dynamics of our times and the opportunities that these inner and outer dynamics present for each of us. So far, the courses have been very successful. People respond surprisingly well. This really, to me, is a very concrete intervention that moves us towards transforming turbulence into conscious social evolution. And as was discussed at yesterday's series of panels, a vision-driven approach is needed in order to create a global culture and architecture of conscious interdependence and regenerative restructuring of social, economic, and natural systems. This kind of scaled endeavor, in the view of many, is the best response to the forces of the old world of corporate empire building and the rule of might. So I think I'll stop here so that we can discuss. Thank you.
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you very much, Elena. This is excellent. You focused on education, vast-scale training programs, global cultural creation that needs to be disseminated. And these are specific proposals that I would also like to hear from everybody, as we agreed on at the beginning. So, Stefan, you have worked for a long while now on very powerful initiatives that you disseminated through the World Academy. But I'm sure that with the new developments on the global scale recently, you must have advanced your own work towards the global social transformation that you started with transformation of finance.
Yeah. Mila,
Please.
first of all, thank you very much. Can I show you one graph?
If we can get our team to allow to allow a screen sharing for all.
A screen sharing for all. Does it work? No. Does it work?
Yes, it works.
I just want to show you one graph. And first of all, I would like to thank Mila for inviting me to this panel, Gary for making this GA again a feast of thoughts and a community of committed people. It was probably so far one of the best GIs I've ever attended. And special thanks to all the WAAS support team, kind of the invisible hand behind that makes it all possible. Without them, the entire agenda wouldn't work. Okay, let's focus from my side as a shrink on 7 aspects of a social theory of development, a conscious social theory of development. And I think there's at least 9 components which are of relevance. The first one is we have to be aware that any ontogenetic individual development should match with a phylogenetic development, and they basically follow a fractal order. Second, social development follows emergent structures and not linear ones. Third, we should watch out for unintended consequences we generate through our narrow-minded consciousness. Whenever we evolve, we should start honoring the given, criticize what is left, transcend towards a greater whole. And we should watch out for an individual fallacy and look out for an upgrade of the institutional design, meaning trying to come up with new incentives, new ways of how we're dealing with systemic issues. Any social theory of development should further face collective taboos and shadows. AI is one of them at the moment we're facing, how to manage. The other one, I think, from my perspective and my understanding, is the money system. Okay, we're not consciously aware of what's happening there. Seventh, every trend we're looking at, it's supposed to be inclusive, more holistic, diverse, and more human-centered. And anytime, as Gary said in his plenary session yesterday morning, anytime transformation gets too fast, where we're not able to include the majority of the world population, we are experiencing sorts of regression, sorts of dissociation, and sorts of projection, right? And finally, I think when we're talking about a conscious social development, it's about having the right narrative in your brain, in your mind, having the right mindset. And the mindset that helps me coming up with the right vision and the right mission is the picture of the staircase, right? We are stepping up or down a staircase. This can be consciously done along these 9 components. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stefan. This was always very systematic from you. I mean, I know you typically speak about the money as, in other words, making money conscious. That's a very powerful thought. How to make money conscious and how to use money as a currency, as a token of social trust and exchange, token of social exchange and dialogue in so many ways, of exchange of values, what it truly should be used consciously and conscientiously. So let us go back to that. I really appreciate that you were very mindful of time. So I would like now to call on Alison, who has been working exactly on mobilizing social forces through her own unique way of spreading the thought of interdependence, of which Elena was speaking about, as the key driver. Key, I always say, scientific and spiritual, to unite the knowledge, understanding and knowledge and wisdom that all beings, all life forms, and all phenomena are interdependent. If all of our systems are based and built on that knowledge, what would they look like? And this is what Allison's unique take is on how to mobilize people, power, and perspectives and all the social forces towards the global social transformation. Welcome, Allison.
Thank you so much, Mila, Gary, and happy birthday. None of you look 65, much younger. Who could forget this? And who would like to? In 2020, the world went to a masquerade party no one wished to attend. COVID etched one more trauma into civilization's scar tissue. From pandemic to war to environmental breakdown and more, the global body is ill. A global identity crisis akin to World War We and an AI culture that vivifies this. Paranoia is rising, paradigms are dying, and this pendulum swing of death and rebirth mode is overwhelming. We need decompression mode, and perspective is now everything. But we've lost our North Star. Visions obscured by chaotic misinformation, disinformation, and the panic we're now in. We're hurting. We need healing the troubled human condition from its root system. Thus far, man-made or natural catastrophe rallies the global dysfunctional family. We need to get our act together before its Act 3 finale. Extraordinary solutions are everywhere. They're bursting across the worldwide spectrum, yet they're siloed in sectors. They're segregated, and they need amplifying and a spellbinding context that unifies them. Meanwhile, phenomenal technological innovations are accelerating beyond our capacity to integrate, and our biological humanity is now at stake. So building resilient societies is more than just mechanics. Humanity and technology need to dance together. Climate change has brought us to our knees. Changing the overheated emotional climate can bring us to our senses. Babies kicking up a storm and avoiding a breach depends upon midwifing humanity in sanity through cohesion, not division. When an individual body gets ill, we seek medical help. Same when our cars break down and we get a tune-up, or our computers with a reboot. Same with the global body. And absent of relief, epochs of accumulated dis-ease now explode across embittered populations. As above, so below? Hopefully, no. Columbus departed the old world only to discover it was not the only world, and that the new world was inhabited. Just 100 kilometers due north of my head and all of ours lies another vast foreign landscape, space. Promise looms, so does hazard in a Wild West terrain far beyond our comprehension, and one that we risk making the same mistakes in, except this time, who knows what other non-terrestrial cultures we might be disrespecting or disrupting. Exploration, that's our life force, but without humility, it becomes a nemesis, driving this mess of our humanness. Technology itself isn't bad. It's just that we're so divorced from our humanity that it's becoming a replacement rather than a comrade. It's stealing the spotlight on the stage of life. Why? Why do we so loathe ourselves that we give away our starring roles, our divine power base? When enough people feel hopeless, helpless, purposeless, self-worthless, emotional states metastasize into nation states, which become prey to power plays, which ultimately affect everybody when waves of desperate war, climate, or economic refugees suddenly arrive at our own shrinking doorsteps, and the good neighbor policy rapidly evaporates. You think we have problems with aliens? Try the alienated state of our world. The global body is a metaphor for a human body. Arm is not a leg, is not a head, any more than an Asia is an America, is a Europe or Africa, nor should they be. Each individual part is both star and interdependent co-star in maintaining our healthy overall performance on the stage of life. So why would an arm attack its leg, attack its head? And how can global bodies survive, much less thrive, under the weight of perpetual self-inflicted wounding? How we use our minds becomes key. Thus far, it's using us and driving us crazy. Yet that's our fertile crescent, the birthplace of humanity insanity. It's also the birthplace of our discontent and disconnect from self, other, and something greater that's creating humanity's insanity. Where are the safeguards to protect our creativity, our divinity, the essence of our humanity? Humanity insanity is a brand worth investing in, nurturing, disarming, and partying for. No, not party politics. No, not party divides. It is time for disarmament of a breathtaking kind. Nothing to do with warring nation states, everything to do with enriching our emotional states. From AI to HI, artificial intelligence. Let's apply the wizardry of technology to the wonders of humanity in every sentient being and showcase this face of our global selfie from its good side in real time for the very first time to remind us. Let's dance together, take center stage together, and remember who's the true star, lest AI try to steal the spotlight and cast us off this wondrous stage of life. We can't wait for wars to dissipate, climate to cooperate, to roll out the ammo. It's time to mobilize the troops and override fear-based media marketing with out-of-this-world party planning. It's time to coalesce the power of our imaginations across every culture, sector, and generation and use technology to facilitate this. From AI to HI, it's time to get high on life and gift wrap this planet in bold inspiration. Time to avert a sixth mass extinction event with a sixth mass evolution event. The world's a mess and we need a miracle. Let's have a party and party plan the miraculous. Consider this. Party vibes date back to ancient times, circa 3000 BCE, honoring cities like Dionysia, ancient Greece, deities, ancient Rome, community, Heb, Heb in Egypt. They celebrated harvests, bounties, or warded off evil spirits. In today's vernacular, we might ask the gods for forgiveness, given the gods of industry seem to have forsaken us. In other words, it's a form of community bonding, desperately missing in today's fractured world. What Mesopotamia is to the Fertile Crescent, our heart-centered minds are to our human essence, and Earth to the universe. So how about honoring the cradle of our all-encompassing cosmic civilization with captivating amazement and use of tech to facilitate this? If the Amazon is lungs of the world, arts and culture are the heartbeat of humanity. Their social impact can't be overstated, though even notables like Woodstock and Live Aid are no longer adequate. We're convulsing in birth contractions, desperate for hope, depression's an epidemic, and the one industry outpacing the military-industrial complex, the wellness industry by 3-to-1 ratio or thereabouts. So great global reset needs a great shift in mindset about the world around us, within us, and worlds beyond us. From entertainment to tourism to environmental health and planetary beautification, from culinary arts to cultural fashion to feats of sports, consciousness, science, and well-being, let's champion the ultimate stimulus package and launch a worldwide party industry. And let's do so making history in synchronicity with Synchronicity, a phenomenal music-powered party for the planet, celebrating every sentient being, broadcast live from multiple event sites worldwide and space, biennially. I've been party planning nearly 40 years. Timing's everything, divine timing.
Thank you, Alison.
In conclusion, I just want to say love is the universal language, music is the portal, and aided by technology, Synchronicity offers a spectacularly enduring vessel. The human conditions operating system needs to now run on love. Thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you, Alison. Thank you so much. She has, as you understood, a whole vision of how things can be organized to mobilize the social force, as we have done it before through Woodstock, Live Aid, and on. It is apparent to all three of the speakers, through everything that we have heard from all three speakers, that we're asking for a cultural change through a narrative. Elena spoke about that. Stefan also spoke about that. Alison certainly spoke about that, about a new story that needs to be told and that needs to be disseminated, subscribed to, and propelled and lived as a sublimation of all of our rights, responsibilities, and the rights to fulfillment and the rights to realizing our potential on this planet in this lifetime. As a sublimation of it comes the idea of Alison's to create a planetary party, which is right on point, because it seems to, according to all the trends and the development with the technology, we are bound to enter the era of experiential economy. With that being said, it's the grand narrative that has been preoccupying our next speaker, Lawrence Ford, who has always worked between on the correlation between the inner world and the outer world, the correlation between the inner transformation and the macrocosm and the macro story and the macro narrative that we're living collectively. Lawrence, please.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for these wonderful comments thus far, and congratulations to 65 years of deep, meaningful work for the Academy, and it's an honor to be part of this. I will be very brief because I'm excited to get into a dialogue here with my esteemed colleagues. I am coming to you from the middle of, this is perfect because I'm coming to you from the middle, in a boat in the middle of the Gulf of, I'm not sure if it's the Gulf of Mexico or the Gulf of America. But that will define the speed of our change these days. I think my internet is stable enough to hang in here with everybody. So thank you for putting up with us. I want to start with just a little bit of a story. If we go back to many of our listeners and my esteemed panels may recall a famous picture taken in Manhattan in 1900. And it was a shot down the street of Manhattan, and it was 99% horses everywhere. And 13 years later, there was one horse in all cars. Now, back in those days, that was very fast change before technology and all of the tools we have today for speed. And the fascinating thing for me when I look at history is, guess what all the experts were focused on back then? Literally horse shit. They were focused on the big manure crisis. How do we design better shovels? How do we regulate these issues to get rid of all of this manure? And that to me is a wonderful, wonderful story of where we are today as humanity. As we're moving from deeply into the depth of the age of knowledge, where intellect and information was prime, all of our credentials and all of the schools we went to that leveraged everything we had to rehash information. It is history. It is a fascinating time to be alive. And so my calling is, Mila, to your point, and to the essence of this session, is we do need something different to mean, something we can all get behind. Because what artificial intelligence is doing for us today, and here's a shameless plug, as I write about in my book that's coming out in December 7th of this year, is really the fact that it is shifting everything exponentially, and it is a mirror of our core systems-based thinking and programming that it's putting back to us. It's not doing anything to us. It's showing us what we've created with all of our incentives itself. And it's going to magnify us off the cliff if we're not careful. So really the meaning that I would like to call forth for humanity during this shift is changing what we value most, what our highest level of currency is as humans. And just imagine for a moment, if this wasn't such a crazy idea, that it was really, we looked at each other and said, boy, you are a special human being. You have a gift like no other. And how can we help you live that? Because we know that that thread in this tapestry of life is the most important thing. Because when we're on purpose and living our purpose, we have inner peace. And when more of us do it, we have world peace. And although we can be pretty messed up creatures at times, as being demonstrated often over and over again through history, when we're on purpose, man, we are unstoppable. And we have all of the solutions in the world that we need. They just need to be discovered, empowered, and amplified. And imagine if that system, and I will finish with this, implemented into our core structure of economics in GDP, because that is what drives everything, is incentive. And we cannot forget our world of capital, because that is the fuel on the fire of technology. Imagine for a moment if we moved from GDP to GD purpose, and it wasn't some soft, fluffy idea, but actually became one of the most important economic indicators or stock analyst tools, where Wall Street falls in love with it rather than thinks it's fluff. And so meaning and purpose at a time where we can all come together, when AI is going to continue to fuel the level of separation, not only of capital and wealth, but of attention, is a time for the calling. And I'm excited about having this conversation with all of you here today.
Thank you so much. This really gives us a very high level reference point from everything that we have shared so far. I would like to acknowledge some of the comments that were shared in the background, because I think we need to make sure that there are also other critical voices that need to be heard. But I also have some questions for you, and the questions that we can discuss amongst ourselves, which I think would be really good to have an exchange, so you are not all blocked off into a little screen squares, mentally or visually. Marianne, thank you so much. One of the comments she has sent says, thanks, highly disagreeing with transcendence part. I think it is more important that it's transformation, not to trespass or pass over, not flying around intending to transcend in where we can fail down or hit ourselves, just as an example. And indeed, Marianne is confirming that independence and codependence are not the same as interdependence. This is, I think, what we have all confirmed. Alex Shenderov basically said we loathe not ourselves, but each other, and we do so as a result of decades of anti-human propaganda. He's asking about how can we effectively counter the current xenophobia, cynicism, and global problem. There are so many. I think I think it would be safe if I responded on behalf of the panel that how I understood it is that we basically only can hate another if we don't feel safe inside ourselves and we don't really like our own being. This is a way of externalizing that force. Everybody's nodding, help me here, because we cannot have a full conversation on that. And there's another interesting comment that says, that is concerned about how we can actually impact conflict cessation, conflict transformation, conflict resolution, also from Marianne, and how we can actually remember not only issues with pandemia, as she has called it here, plandemia, and genocide, that these are things that we need to be highly aware in a way that I think has left us at a very high note, but how can we impact on the ground the world that we live in? Elena was mentioning Bulgaria, Lawrence is in USA, Allison is in Germany, Gary's in India, Stefan also in Germany, I am in Montenegro. This is a very good grounding comment that says, what are you each doing? What are we each doing on our ground where we are situated in our own context to send a signal to the world of what needs to be done? And also, how are we receiving in return the signals back from the world to refine our local solutions and to prototype them in a way that could serve all humanity? If we can do a speed run, it would be very helpful. And I will do the same direction. And if there is a moment, I would also like to share what I am prototyping. I started with introducing myself and initiatives that I'm leading here as a boundary bender. So I would love to hear first, Elena, you spoke of your institute. What are some of the ways in which you have expanded, not only attracting those that are attending the work that you do in the institute to ennoble and emancipate their inner being, to improve the quality of their lives, but also what are some of the ways in which you're connecting, such as with World Academy or your own government or other alliances and associations, to amplify your message and to converge your own social power?
Thank you. That's a great question, and I'll try to be very quick here. It is all about changing the narrative. And so I'm part of a large number of global initiatives, some of them initiated from the US, but really all over Europe and wider than that. And they are all working around a new narrative that has been spreading and that calls itself the unitive narrative. And from the unitive narrative, which actually shows through very current science how very interdependent and one we actually are, there are all kinds of practical projects that emerge. One that I'm particularly involved in with the US and Europe and globally is the Unitive Justice Project. And that's something very interesting to talk about in the Balkans, which is what I do, working with NGOs and working through the Institute and working with professional circles here. There is also unitive economics, unitive media. There is a number of very far-reaching unitive projects that I'm aware of and in varying degrees part of. And one that particularly inspires me is that scientists of every discipline have come together to build what they now call science of unitive love. And it is science. It is physics, it is biology, it is psychology, it is all the behavioral and biological sciences, and it's very serious. And recently, I'm actually working with a team of AI builders who are creating a program that will gather all the unitive data and reconfigures it through AI intelligence to answer all kinds of very concrete questions. For example, I'll be doing a youth summit in 3 weeks, in 3 days, I'm sorry, in Romania. And so I asked this software, this AI software, what do you think would be the most important aspects to emphasize for youth who come from all over the world to understand the unitive nature of reality? And this software gave me a beautiful 2-page syllabus, which I'm actually going to experiment with in Romania in 3 days. So this is one example. There's many I could share, but I wanted to say that really there are some very far-reaching and very practical, very down-to-earth unitive initiatives and community building initiatives. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, because we really need almost a 1-minute run to fix the world. I mean, we can definitely do it from the inside. But Stefan, please.
Okay. I was not prepared to give this personal comments on top of it. I will try to do it on an individual
What are you
level.
doing now, in other words? Feel free to
Oh,
share.
yeah,
You
that's
do
easy.
so
It's
much
easy.
in the world.
Give me 50 seconds. Okay. On an individual level, I'm initiated in several contemplative practices over the last 20 years. I'm a long-term practitioner. On an institutional level, I'm a medical director who's transforming a hospital chain into an integral medical institution where we integrate wisdom traditions in basic care. And on an institutional, international level, I've just finished my appointment at the German government board on finance, and I'm involved since 20 years, 25 years in the link between finance and sustainability. So I have a lot to do, and it's exciting to be part of that transformation process. Thank you.
So, quick question for you, Stefan, then, because you're time efficient. How do you think all of these initiatives and all this work can be truly multiplied and can be
Oh,
scaled
well, I
out
mean,
and scaled up?
I'm much more humble in this field. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just trying to do my thing, right? Whenever there's a request, I'm responding to it. We have to treat thousands of patients here, right? I give 30, 40, 50 talks every year on finance and sustainability. And I have a 2-hour meditation practice every day. So I don't know how it's multiplying. Maybe you know, maybe someone in the audience knows. I'm just doing my thing. I'm far too
Very good.
introverted in order to constantly talk about these things, I'm sorry.
Very, very good. Very good. I mean, this is already a contribution. And maybe one of my suggestions would be you and all of us are being, so to speak, harvested, or also and two-way street harvesting AI right now. if we approach it with these questions. You just said we shouldn't be talking so much, but we certainly will be talking with AI. So if maybe we use AI to ask the good questions, but because of the quality of the human decision depends on the quality of questions we ask. Maybe that's the part of the public education that needs to be happening. What are you feeding AI? What are you feeding your own being? Right?
Yeah.
So, and what are you in return using that as food for? So, Allison, if we can be really brief to make sure that we make it and include as much insight as possible.
I'm going to be so brief that I'm actually going to pass on this because we are very much in the architectural, structural phase, looking for partners, putting out content creation, and we've got International Director of Live Aid on board. So these are part of the building blocks in the backstage.
So let's make sure that the conditions for the party planning and this big event, let's call it a global Woodstock of the really good kind that needs to happen for all of us. That you are, getting us updated on how we can participate and how we can contribute to the global party. Lawrence, please.
Okay, so Allison, I'll bridge a little bit of yours, and I appreciate the. I think back to the late great. Many of you on this panel knew of her, Susan Davis, who's left us in body form. I remember when we were doing the future capital at the UN. She pulled me aside of the way. She goes, "Lawrence, you really want to change the world?" I said, "Yes, Susan, I do." She said, "Throw a better party." So well done, Allison. That's also part of what we do at the Conscious Capital Foundation. So what we're up to is we are celebrating people's purpose who are making a difference in the world. We're also doing research and development around GD purpose, and I know I'll be collaborating with a lot of my fellows at the Academy on that work. The most, and of course, just completed a very, very big run on the book that's coming out called The World Doesn't Need You, which addresses this transformational shift that we are upon as humanity, which is in any great change is really a choice. It's a binary choice at this point, I think, for our species. And it's either we wake up and we really start working on a new purpose and a new meaning as a species and design our systems to incent that, because without that, it's just talk. Or we exponentially drive ourselves off a cliff. Because to your point and a lot of our panelists' points, AI is just mirroring what we have programmed as a species. And it's showing us in massive exponential form who we are. So we can either choose to see that, or we can choose to keep our eyes closed and continue on this path. So the foundation and my work, everything I do is around that, along with my fellow beautiful humans at the World Academy and all of the great people around the world that see this time as something very, very special and an amazing time to be alive. And my friend Stefan, my real answer, although you said it much quicker, is I really have no idea. I'm just doing my best and paying attention and aligning my purpose the best I can in the world to share at this important time.
Thank you so much. We're 2 minutes over time, but things are going over time, and I would love to maybe use additional 3 minutes max that we can wrap this up. How do you wrap this up? At least we have spoken about the initiatives that are taking off and will continue to grow in the world. So there's nothing to be wrapped up here. But the voices of the people in the background are important, and I will try briefly to mention these people, these presences with us in the collective intelligence space. Douglas was talking about that interdependence is not the same as intra-dependence, and that we really need to deepen our understanding. Apparently, Douglas, I'm interpreting you, but our all intra-cultural sense as intercultural sense as well. And the full consciousness and how we as humans are co-emergent with Earth. And this is why Susan was asking, I think, who was asking about how much time are we spending? Dana, I apologize. It was Dana. Susan Davis is with us. But Dana was asking, how much time do each of us spend in nature? How much time in silence, speaking to Stefan's point, to go into your inner landscape? And how do we recognize all our relations? Alex spoke about the importance of purpose. That speaks directly to Lawrence's point. Douglas again and some other people here and our friends were speaking about different resources and initiatives that have taken off before. I recommend, Heiner says, for your next years to check Unity and Diversity we did for Bertalanffy, 100 Years and Dialogue Among Civilizations. UN General Assembly 2001, initiated by Kofi Annan. Then I'm going to have to, many thanks to Lawrence again from somebody else, but with this, I just really wanted to bring in voices into collective intelligence because it is really the way we feed the narrative and get validations back and forth. My comment here would also be for all of us to ask ourselves, first and foremost, what it is that we're feeding into collective intelligence from this perspective. Also, to think of ways why there have been so many initiatives for so long that have not necessarily scaled out, that did give birth to organizations such as World Academy 65 years ago, but that we continually come to the crossroads of to be or not to be. And how is it that every evolutionary move and cycle requires certain sacrifices? Can those sacrifices not be any more human, but maybe symbolic sacrifices of certain outdated narratives, and how we can create new narratives to drive the evolutionary process in which we support each other in a complementary way, not in a conflictual way, grinding each other literally down into new matter and new mental states through conflict, but through complementarity. So these are some of the questions that I would like to kind of leave you with, and maybe point out to the initiative that I said I would love to mention to you briefly, that I'm prototyping in Montenegro, which is the culture of interbeing. With the first strategy for interculturalism and social cohesion that we gave birth to in December of 2024 here in Montenegro, at very difficult circumstances at the intersection of East, West, North, and South. Montenegro has become the first country in the world in which culture of interbeing is its public policy. Without going into the implications of what that is, and maybe at other panels I will be able to share the different facets of universal humanistic values that inform the culture of interbeing. It would be important to understand that maybe from every standpoint, from Stefan's meditative state, from Lawrence's boat, from Allison's planning the party like the good global friend that she wants to be, from Elena's connectors and weaving efforts and her groundedness in her institute, we are all sending a signal out. And how we can amplify that signal through the World Academy of Art and Science is the most significant question we can possibly ask now. As a group of friends, as a group of colleagues, as a group of co-creators that have met in 1960 and founded the World Academy, what will it take to scale out and scale up the mission of the World Academy together as a collective intelligence, as a collectivity from within and outside, to generate the culture of peace, social transformation that benefits us all, and a new culture of empathy, I would say, that Allison's party should launch. Thank you very much. Thank you for spending time together for this mental meditation, working meditation together, and let us continue burning bright and sending a positive signal out at the time that is really needed in the world. I'll see you in another panel and elsewhere around the globe. Thank you so much.
Okay, welcome everyone. I see that we have most of our panelists for this session, and I'd like to just give it maybe one more minute since I think maybe we're missing just one, and then we can delve in. Actually, we actually seem to be missing two of our panelists, so I'm just going to put a quick note into one of them and make sure. Okay, I assume that we will be having the two. Well, one of them just joined us, so one of the panelists. So we're waiting just one more. And let me begin by introducing myself. My name is Stephen Hartman. I'm the founding executive director of the Bridges Coalition in UNESCO's Management of Social Transformations program. This maybe gives some idea when I say how Bridges is nested within UNESCO's Intergovernmental and International Science Program Management of Social Transformations. Maybe then it makes a little sense why I'm moderating this session and why I'm grateful to have been asked by the World Academy of Art and Science, for which I'm also a proud fellow, to moderate this discussion. I think we have an interesting 50 minutes ahead, and I thought I would just take a moment, first of all, before I say anything about the content and expected focuses of this session, to indicate that that we're going to follow a little bit different of a format in this one, maybe than some of the sessions have had up till now, at least the ones I had a chance to follow. In that I've asked for shorter interventions from each of the panelists around a range of questions that were pre-circulated. And each of the panelists has given me an indication which questions they find lend themselves best to their interventions. So we'll give this a try. If all goes as I hope it will go, we'll hear from each of the panelists in just a couple of minutes. And we'll hear opening statements by each of them that will be 2 to 3 minutes in length. And then following that, we will then have 3 rounds of progressively shorter and shorter question and answer dialogues, ending with a final sort of lightning round where it's about a half a minute each response from everyone. So we'll see how this format works. Again, thank you for joining us. I'm delighted to be moderating this session on behalf of WAAS and on behalf of the Bridges Coalition and UNESCO's MOST program. And I want to just explain 1 or 2 things about what the Bridges Coalition is. We're also proud to be partners in this WAAS at 65 conference. It's a very, very important topic that we're addressing here, and it's a very important topic for the conference more generally, that we've had a chance to be developing in a series of conversations that went back earlier this year at the Baku Global Forum, and even before that. And then, of course, as we've seen, there have been publications in CODMIS and other contexts that have been pursuing these questions. And I see that there's a message from Gustavo. We can't see you, Gustavo. I'm not quite sure why. Could Gustavo please be added by video and audio to the speakers in the session? And at Arizona State University, where WAAS, together with Bridges and with the Julian Wrigley Global Futures Laboratory. I had an opportunity to co-organize a session earlier in the spring. And this is a vital topic about how, especially in these times of accelerating what appear to be accelerating turbulence and volatility, we can be working to identify how to move forward in terms of management of global transformations that are necessary for us to be dealing with the great challenges of the 21st century and beyond. Certainly when it comes to climate change, biodiversity, and a whole range of challenges that are implicated in, let's say, the SDGs, but also beyond them. And so with this in mind, Bridges, I can tell you, is a global coalition nested in the Management of Social Transformations program, which has 6 hubs currently around the world and between 40 and 50 member organizations. And our flagship hub is at the ASU Global Futures Laboratory. And this is one of the reasons why we've been doing so much together in lockstep, I suppose, this year, especially also with WAAS and with many of our partners, the Club of Rome and World University Consortium and beyond. So that's the general sort of participatory and partnership background behind this. I'd like to introduce our speakers now and ask them to reflect a little bit in their opening 2 to 3 minute statement on the description for this event and the premise for it. The speed and complexity of global social evolution we propose is too great to be managed alone through existing ideas, policies, national and multinational institutions, and distributions of social power as we've known them in the 20th century and in the early 20th century. So the session we're organizing now explores the need for developing a comprehensive transdisciplinary and I would say transsectoral approach to the global process, and also with an emphasis on formulating effective institutional strategies to promote an integrated and organizational strategies to promote an integrated approach to conscious social evolution. Now, our first speaker today is Gustavo Marino, Director of Social Policies at UNESCO. And I'd like to invite Gustavo, please, to give us some initial reflections on that premise for the session, as well as to familiarize our group a little bit better, very succinctly, with the ambitions and objectives of the Management of Social Transformations program, which is based in social and human sciences at UNESCO. So please, over to you, Gustavo.
Thank you, Stephen. Hello to everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you today in this event by the World Academy of Arts and Sciences, an institution whose vision and mission closely matches with the purpose of UNESCO's Management of Social Transformation program, known as MOS. Let me begin with the definition you may already know, but we rarely pause to reflect on. A socioeconomic paradigm is a broadly accepted way of thinking that shapes how we understand the relationship between the economy and society. It's built on shared assumptions and methods used by economists, policymakers, researchers, social scientists, etc., to determine how economies should function to support a social goal. But here's the thing. Socioeconomic paradigms are not made to last forever. They evolve in time, sometimes for better, sometimes not the case, but they evolve. And in times like ours, this is marked by overlapping and reinforcing crises, as it's clearly outlined in the paper presented by WAAS on Sources and Solutions for Global Turbulence. Now, this may sound obvious, but it's often forgotten in policymaking. As a result, we continue to respond to today's challenges with tools and frameworks that were designed or thought of for a different area and that no longer match the world we live in, or the given conditions, given the type of crisis we are facing, the type of outlook, the type of preferences. At UNESCO, through the Management of Social Transformations program, or MOS program, our mission is to rethink the narrative behind these paradigms and help governments design policies that better reflect people's lived realities. The aim is to bridge social science and public policy, translating research into decisions that are both inclusive and accountable to those who live with the consequences the longest. MOST emphasizes interdisciplinary collaboration to strengthen the research policy nexus and to deepen the understanding of interlinked challenges such as the climate change, the digital transformation, and inequality. So how do we do this? How does the program contribute to the shift in narrative concretely? On the one hand, our research or publications help challenge the common misconceptions, like the idea that there's a false dichotomy between equity and efficiency. This we address, for instance, in our 2022 report, Inclusive and Resilient Societies, or the belief that social investments are unproductive, that they're just an expenditure. And we're attacking this in a new policy paper called The Economic Case for Social Investment, showing that it's not only investing in things that improve people's lives it's not only important for those people who are beneficiaries of this special, but they're beneficial for everybody because it leads to better economic growth, better economic results for everybody. So it's an economic case for social investment. On the other hand, UNESCO seeks to be a laboratory of ideas among its functions. And we have produced what we call the Thought Leader Series, where we invite leading thinkers to help reimagine current socioeconomic paradigms. We had, for example, very recently, Professor Carlos Lopez, who gave a powerful lecture last June on the future of African economies. The Harvard professor Rebecca Henderson, who explored how to rethink capitalism in a world on fire. But we have more. We had Helmut Rosa, noted philosopher, last December. We had Daron Acemoglu talking about technological progress and how they believe that technological progress the rising tide lifts all boats. It's not always the case. It depends on the choices we make, the institutions we have. So these are just examples that don't capture the full scope of the program's work, but they reflect our mission. Now, to manage global transformations, we must rethink not only of policies, but also on the processes by which they are made. We must embed ethics, equity, and participation at the heart of public decision making. And this is the purpose of MOST, and that's why we see the WAAS as a natural partner. We can move together for transformation rather than shared values and also solidarity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gustavo. And just to remind everyone, if you see my hand go up, that means we've reached the time limit for that particular intervention. In light of some of the important observations and points that Gustavo just made, I think I'd like to move to our second speaker today, Harpinder Kolakot from the Global and the Interim Executive Director of the Global Public Investment Network, to ask her please to share her opening statement and thoughts with us. Welcome.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this conversation. I completely agree with what Gustavo has just outlined as this profound moment of inflection that we're living through at the moment. One where we are aware that our current systems of governance and financing are no longer fit for purpose. And I think it's in that essence of that global social transformation really happens, the recognition that we need deep, deliberate, coordinated, systemic change in how we govern, how we share resources, and how do we define collective responsibility. And unfortunately, global social transformation cannot be managed with these outdated models, particularly of finance and power. And I'm going to focus a lot of my comments today around the systems, the international architecture around financing specifically as well. But unfortunately, we're living in this very contested in-between space at the moment. On the one side, we've got clear moves toward fragmentation, protectionism, distrust, retreating from multilateralism. And on the other, we've got that growing recognition that global challenges demand integrated cooperative solutions. And yet what we're struggling with is how do we move from that control, strongman politics towards a much more collaborative form of governance? And it's the how do we do this? How do we bridge these two opposing worlds that we're really struggling with at the moment? And so this is where transition to a greater integration, or whether we regress backward, really comes in. Like, which way will we go? We are at a crossroads at the moment. And a lot of this will depend on how we rebuild institutions that people can really trust in, how we finance cooperation, not through coercion, but through shared responsibility. And that's the promise of models like global public investment, the model that I'm currently responsible for representing. And this is global public investments, been an idea out there for about 10 or so years. It's not a new idea, but I think it's an idea for which the time has come. And at the heart of this idea is the problem that we're trying to solve, which is the problem with the current global financing architecture, which is fundamentally built for another era. Even when we established the SDGs, which I know are a very progressive agenda, it's a fantastic agenda, but unfortunately the financing models that underpinned it were still very much from the past rather than from the future. And unless we address that, we will continuously be out of sync. So much of international public finance is still governed by that sort of donor-recipient mindset. It's still very hierarchical, it's fragmented, it's short-term, and it's often driven by political or economic interests rather than global solidarity or justice. So even as we face common threats such as pandemics, planetary collapse, etc., we're still financing through a system that was set up fundamentally to divide us by design rather than bring us together. And it's just inefficient, it's just unjust, and it undermines, and we're seeing it really now, it's undermining democracy, it's weakening trust, and it's delaying the bold actions that are fundamentally needed. So let me just spend 1 minute, if I can, on what is global public investment, and then I will stop there and seek to answer my response in other things. But GPI is a transformation that's shifting from charity to shared responsibility, from control to collaborative governance, and also from shared sustained equitable investment in global commons as well. And it's got 4 key principles which it's based on. It's all contribute, all benefit, all decide, sustainable finance, but fundamentally it puts public purpose first, aligning funding with collective human and planetary needs. And I think that one shift that aligns finance with fairness is going to be really critical for the future.
Thank you very much, Harpinder. And I'd like to move next to our third speaker, Peter Schlosser, who is the Vice President and Vice Provost of Global Futures at Arizona State University, and invite Peter to reflect, give his opening reflections, and also maybe with a view to, if this lends itself to, with a view to thinking about the forces driving transformations of societies globally. Peter.
Thank you, Stephen. A lot has already been said, so I will try to touch on a few points that I feel are part of global transformations that, are important from our perspective here. So first of all, it is a great pleasure to join you for this timely conversation. And it already has been said, we are living in a period of rapid social transformation that's driven by forces that can no longer afford to treat, that we can no longer afford to treat in isolation, such as, for example, accelerating climate change, disrupting technologies, shifting democracies and demographics, and widening social and economic inequalities. The turbulence we are experiencing at this defining moment in history is structural. It signals that the systems and assumptions that we have governed our world for approximately 8 decades are no longer equipped to manage the complexity of this moment, has already been said. Multilateralism, as it exists today, was designed for a different era, one of slower change, simpler systems, and more centralized authority. But the challenges we face now are distributed, complex, interconnected, and evolve at speeds that outpace our current capacity to respond. I think that's an important point. And then what we always find is that we do actually possess more knowledge and more opportunity than we choose to act on. So there is actually a space that is not being entered in that would help with the transformation. And the question then is, what holds us back? And it's not the lack of insight or innovation, but the societal will to embrace the profound transformations needed for long-term planetary and human well-being. Too often, our institutions are reactive when they must be anticipatory and fragmented when they must be integrated. Then the progress stalls not because change is beyond reach, but because we fear that bold action demands sacrifices rather than opportunity, and we are unwilling to make sacrifices. We are creatures of habit. So what we need now is the courage to prioritize long-term collective flourishing over short-term gain, which is governing a lot of what we do, and the foresight to recognize that meaningful transformation requires strategic, structural, and societal trade-offs in pursuit of a more just and thriving futures. So institutions such as the World Academy of Art and Science and the Julian Wrigley Global Futures Laboratory do have a responsibility not only to interpret this in turbulence and the reasons why we have it, but also to shape the architecture of the response. And this entails creating open platforms for transdisciplinary and multi-sector dialogue, reimagining education to address uncertainty with purpose, and developing governance models grounded in adaptability, inclusivity, and planetary responsibility. This is our moment to co-design what comes next, and it requires placing youth at the center of the process. And we have to recognize that what we often do is not really the right track. Youth are not merely inheritors of the future, they are co-creators of it. And while youth must be included in decisive conversations, we must not place the burden of change solely on their shoulders, expecting them to solve the problems created and perpetuated by older generations. If we are truly committed to building just and sustainable futures, we must follow their lead through an intergenerational contract that demands greater contribution from older generations, marked by urgency, humility, and readiness to shift power. And that is tough for us. So to wrap up, turbulence is not merely a sign of crisis. It is a signal and integral part of any transition and transformation. It's part of the process of crossing the threshold between what has been and what could be and should be. To guide such transition, then, we must embrace pluralism by combining the analytical rigor of science, the moral clarity of the humanities, the wisdom of indigenous worldviews, and the foresight of youth to shape just, resilient, and regenerative futures. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. And I'd like to maybe just take the moderator's prerogative to reflect for just a second on one of the points that Peter made about anticipatory governance. And if you think about the logic of the point that you ended on, the sort of key intersection between participatory governance or anticipatory governance and participatory governance is something I might invite on the fly all of the panelists to reflect a little bit on during the course of our conversation. So I'd like to now turn to Petra Künkel from the Executive Committee of the Club of Rome and invite you, please, Petra, to give us your opening statement and thoughts. We're running a little behind schedule, so I'll make some adjustments as we go, but please, 2 to 3 minutes if you could. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. I can connect really well with what has been said so far. And what is amazing is that we actually already have the language of the future. We don't have the future yet, but we do have the language of the future. You can say, okay, this is a group of like-minded spirits. But nevertheless, it is important that we do have the language of the future. I think it's absolutely clear we live in turbulent times. And we actually live in times of polycrises. I don't think I'm saying anything new, but the polycrises are, and that is important, man-made. So we did it. So if we did it, then maybe we also have a chance to undo it. The question is, what kind of further crises, we need to go through, before we can undo it. But what is important for me to add to the conversation here is that we are in the process of unraveling, and that shows the language that we're using: anticipatory governance, participatory governance, co-creation, etc. We are at the threshold of unraveling a dominant civilizational model. And the dominant model is not only dominant, but it's a model of dominance. So it's a model of hierarchies. It's a model of binaries. And it is, to just kind of summarize it, it's a model where some decide which lives are worth living and which lives are disposable. And I don't need to mention any of the wars that at the moment are happening, but this is like it's a manifestation of that very, very brutal paradigm. So that old paradigm actually is, at the moment, there are lots of destructive forces that reinforce and rebuild this paradigm, this paradigm, the dominant paradigm, which is a dominance paradigm. But we also have a lot of transformative forces. And at the moment, we don't don't see the transformative forces, although there are, like Carpenter, in institutions, there are beyond institutions, there are indigenous communities, there are in feminist movements, there are in human rights movements, there are in social movements, but they are in companies, they are actually everywhere, but they are not kind of strong or powerful enough to take over, to use that word, the dominant narrative that is manifesting in a very, very different way. So in the last panel, somebody said we are at a binary point, kind of in systems thinking, you also say a bifurcation. And I want to just kind of take a note of caution and say, let's not see it as binary, because those who are deeply in transformation know that transformations happen if we are able to knit the new into the old. So it's not kind of that cutoff point, but it is our ability to knit the new into the old. And that's actually how life works. So I think the big question of the transformative forces is, can we put enough life-affirming kind of measures and forces into the, let's say, the existing structures? And one word about the multilateral institutions. The issue is, number one, we really need to repurpose and say it is about a good life for all. And that needs to be defined and participatorily defined contextually. So there cannot be a universal, there are probably kind of universal principles, but these universal principles need to be elaborated, in a different way and in a participatory way. So that we need to repurpose multilateral institutions, and we also need to recheck them in terms of what they do, and how they operate, and how they reinforce their old paradigms in terms of dominance and in terms of hierarchy, or how they actually work into the new paradigm. And I think the most important step that we need to do in this is look, where are the life-affirming systems? Who are the actors, be it NGOs, be it people in governments, be it people in policymaking, be it people in indigenous communities and feminist movements, etc. So look how we can support this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Petra. And with no long delay, I'm going to go directly to David Harries and ask David, please, to give your of the strategic foresight coach and human security engineer and WAAS fellow, to give us your opening statement.
Folks, this is my the third panel I expected to be on. Because of confusion in the organizers, I originally was going to lead a panel on learning, and then I was going to be in the education panel. So let me start by pointing out the Inuit stone cut behind me, which sums up my views about where we're at. This is titled, from 1956, an Inuit carver who I knew, "The loon speaks to the fish." We have to have more interoperable discussions among very, very different organizations. Let me now read the statement I asked when I was volunteered for the education panel. Humanity is in a precarious state. Learning goes beyond formal education, and true leadership values contributions from all, not just those in authority. And third, let me provide my short edit for one of the elements in the abstract for this session. We have a need to develop a coherent and non-discriminatory plurigenerational global approach that underpins effective institutions whose strategies promote interoperable collaboration for humanity's security, not integration. No organization wants to be integrated. It wants to contribute. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. And I want to thank everyone for the introductory comments and framing that you each offered. And what I'd like to suggest now is that, first of all, could I ask the WAAS team that's helping to manage this session to resend the link to Peter Schlosser, who lost the Zoom connection somehow. And I'm not sure the link is readily available to him where he is. So if you could, that would be wonderful. Thank you. The second thing I want to do is return back to our first speaker of today and maybe mention that one of the ambitions for the session is that we'd have these opening statements and then three faster and faster, more lightning round of responses. Due to the fact that we've gone about 9 minutes over getting through that first segment, I think that we need to be agile, and I think there's a lesson, there's an object lesson in there somewhere. Rather than having a great idea to begin with and say we're going to stick with it, we need to deal with the conditions as they emerge. And one of those conditions is we won't have time for both for 3 more rounds. We'll have time for 1 more question and then a lightning round at the end. So I'd like to ask each speaker now to respond next to the following questions in about between 1.5 minutes each, if you could, and there'll be time for 1 last comment at the end. So Gustavo, could I ask you, how viable are the ambitions of anticipatory governments rather than being short-term and reactive in managing risks of rapid or accelerated change?
Sorry, sure, I'll be fast. Point is, thinking long term is often seen as a luxury, but it's the opposite. It becomes more essential in times of crisis. And you and I, Stephen, were just last week talking with the Future Generations Commissioner of Wales, the importance of looking at the long term. Anticipatory governance helps avoid costly backlashes by addressing root causes before they escalate. Identify emerging signals that become trends, enables governments to proactively address these challenges and risks, and better respond. So as I mentioned earlier, inclusion is key. Without listening to those most affected, there's no such thing as effective public policy. We make the case of this in most of the work on climate inequality and social investment, as I mentioned before, but also through a focus on futures and foresight. We have a team focusing on that, building long-term capacities, both for individuals and institutions. And we believe that this ability to think ahead is what allows us to support and design policies that are relevant today and resilient for generations to come, and also relevant for addressing that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Gustavo. And I'm gonna jump right in and actually ask you if you have anything particular you can say to this. The same question I'm going to be asking Harpinder next, which is the next speaker, which is essentially about how we can accelerate this sort of necessary social evolution without inciting backlash.
Well, I mean, backlash is central. I mean, it's always there, the possibility. So we have to prevent it, and we have to choose how we're doing it. In the case of the most programs, we're working on 2 key areas: climate action and social investment, each facing different forms of resistance. For climate action, let me address that first. We know that climate change can already hit some people harder than others, especially the most vulnerable. But climate change policies are also harmful and can exacerbate inequalities. So again, we have to think of climate action not just in terms of to address climate change, like for instance reducing the demand for fossil fuels, but think about the social implications of that, because otherwise there's a feeling of injustice and affected people might go against and create opposition to the needed climate policies. So again, in this case, it's an example where we have to think of climate action that's needed to address emissions, but also the social change that is needed. We just published a report on that. Who bears the cost? You can find it in MESCO's website, precisely how climate policies have to be included. Same thing with what I mentioned in my introductory remarks, and I'll be very quick. We have to think of social investment not just as a cost or an expenditure, but as an investment, something necessary not only to protect the population at large, but also to promote economic growth. And that, if we see it that way, and the results will be better, and we will be preventing backlash. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Gustavo. And now, as I redirect that same question to Harpinder about how we can accelerate this process without inciting backlash, I'd also like to sort of nest in that question the idea about any kind of reflections you may have about how this process that we need to sort of have greater sort of engagement with and control over can lead to greater integration rather than regression.
Thank you. Okay, big questions for 90 seconds. First of all, I'd say that transformation without any attention to power and justice will always trigger resistance, right? So we need to ensure that to accelerate without backlash, we're really leading with equity and inclusion at the core in how we lead and move forward and evolve. Ensuring that people in particular, they need to see themselves in the process. They need to not be threatened by it. And for me, this always comes back to ensuring that there are core principles and values that are used to unite and guide us, and also ensure that there's transparent governance, there's co-creation, that the financing models that are actually being designed are there to lift rather than to leave behind. And I think that sort of co-design, co-collaboration really does need to be rooted in fairness. And one of the other things that I would say, just sort of going back slightly on your question around participatory and anticipatory governance, is the importance of really looking at how do we ensure that governance and the models of governance are underpinned by equity and inclusion, but experimentation, innovation really brings in the core voices of the people. Where we see innovation often happening is right there in the communities. That's where innovation is happening, because they're having to adapt and adapt very quickly with very low resources in a way that mostly governments are unaware until it starts to multiply and becomes a bigger crisis. That's too late. We need to be able to bring those voices through at a much earlier stage. And I think that's where, for me, also the focus, Stephen, on the process needs to be. The process needs to be much more enlarged. At the moment, governments make policies, but the roles of communities, civil society, somebody mentioned youth, marginalized groups, how do we ensure that there is greater role and voice in these communities so that that gap, that division isn't just getting larger and larger, but actually we're co-creating together as we move forward into the future? Slightly longer than 90 seconds, sorry.
No, that's okay. We're doing our best as we go along here. These times keep changing a little bit. And so my next framing of a question, thank you very much, Harkinda, is actually directed both to David and to Petra. You had both identified a common question, which is, what is the role of leadership in guiding or directing the process? And I think that dovetails with some of the comments that we just heard. And what role might wider distributed participation play in emergent governance, other than the sort of hierarchical organization? So I'd like to first go to David and then to Petra with that question.
My point about leadership should value contributions from all. Let me go to our current status of the polycrisis. There are more and more disasters these days, whether it's because of conflict or infrastructure failure or climate change consequences. And one thing that we're having to learn more and more often is that the most important first responders in every one of them are the survivors. And survivors are not burdens if they have previously learned how to survive and know how to use resources that help them survive. And therefore, my key issue about leadership is to ensure that everybody who can contribute to looking over the horizon and understanding what the insights from looking over the horizon are contributing to the discussions about participatory governance. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And please, I'll redirect the same question to Petra, please.
So I would say the future of leadership is collective, clearly. And this means that I think we are done with heroic leadership. I think that's a bold statement, but I think we're done forever, and particularly at the moment. Because if you look back to history, then bold leadership in one way or another, even if it was the best of all persons, has turned at some stage into atrocities. And I think that is very, very important to notice. So I do think we are, when I talked about the language of the future, we are already in many places in multi-stakeholder approaches, in participatory governance, in indigenous communities, in the feminist movement, in the social movement. We are at at the point of awareness of co-creation and an awareness that leadership needs to take place because people need to take the lead, but it doesn't need to be single and it doesn't need to be male leaders. So that is absolutely crucial. So I do think we need to really revamp what we think about leadership and say goodbye to anything, that is not participatory, that's not contributing. And it doesn't mean people do not take responsibility. Even shared responsibility is responsibility, and it is a kind of agreement. Who does what according to which kind of expertise and background, etc. So that can all be done. But what is absolutely important is that we don't need strong leaders. But yet at the same time, we need strong collective leaders. So that is my take.
One other question, thanks very much. Both of those perspectives I really appreciate a lot. And I think one of the things, brings us back to some of the points we heard at the very beginning in the introductory statements, the how-to. I think Harpinder had focused on that. How do we do this? So we know, in one sense, we think we know where we need to be going. We're working on having a clear-eyed understanding of the roots of the crises that we're dealing with now, not simply in superficial terms, but that question of how, I think, dovetails with the question concerning a vision of global society and how well that can allow for adaptations quickly enough to respond to the accelerating pace and scale of crises. Now, Peter hasn't joined us yet, but I do know, for whatever reason, but I do know that he's there and he might be able to write something in the chat window. So if you have any comments, Peter, Peter just did join us. So I don't know if you heard that entire question, but it's question 15 from the suggested questions that I wanted to direct your way, Peter. Could you address that one on how a vision of global society can allow for adaptations quickly enough? That's a tough question, the how-to, but where can we begin? Peter, I don't know if you're muted as far as I can tell. Until such time as you're able to join us, I might like to redirect then back to Gustavo about this tough how-to question. Where do we begin, Gustavo?
It's a hard question, but what do we begin? I think one thing we are very insistent on is evidence-based policy, trying to, public problems are wicked problems. Someone came up with that definition, I think is very accurate. And transformations indeed implies big change. We have the effect of social environment. We say we have to have evidence to think and to anticipate and to think about how to move and to not lose track of the social implications, because that can derail efforts and can create backlash. So that's where I would go. Evidence means strengthening the science policy nexus, bringing about a transdisciplinary approach. You, Stephen, have been working on that with British Federation. That's very important as well. Bringing the humanities, bringing science together.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much. And I'd like to invite any of the panelists. Please raise your hand if you have a specific comment you would like to addressing that last question. Please, David.
How not to. Please don't make promises you can't keep. Transitions take time. Promise to work with others who are willing to work with you to make progress. And be honest when progress is slow or, in the world we live in, bumpy. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And I saw that Harpinder had her hand up, so I'd like to ask her to jump in here if she could.
Yes, thank you. I think one of the worries that I've got at the moment, Stephen, is that a lot of the reforms we're seeing of existing systems are all based around lack of resources, right? Rather than a vision of what our governance structure needs to look like for the future. What is it that we're trying to become, and what is the vision, and what do we create based on that vision. And I think that's the key thing for me, is we're really missing that clarity of vision. And if we could really focus on, you mentioned a vision of global society, but then what are the systems that need to underpin that vision of global society is really critical as well.
Thank you very much, Harpin there. And I'd like to go directly to Petra, who's had her hand up. Please, Petra.
Yes, I would suggest the first thing that I would like to suggest is we really need to change our perception, because there are already so many, kind of, let me summarize them as social movements that are working towards a future. I call it a life-affirming future, a good life for all future, etc. And there are already, lots of indicators for that available. So that is already in existence, but it gets too little attention. And it is also a fragmented movement. So it's not one movement. It can never be one movement, because it's the world is pluriverse, and the future world should be not universal, but pluriverse. However, it is really about noticing what is happening. And there is an issue happened on under-resourcing. That is absolutely right. But the question is of attention and better resourcing. So the second element that I would like to suggest, that sounds a bit, that will sound a bit crazy, but in business there is this, what gets measured gets improved. And the issue is we do not measure the future, kind of the good life for all. I'm not saying there are not 150 measurements of well-being economies and different kinds of GDPs, or kind of abolishing GDPs and more holistic indicators. But this is so overly fragmented that the question is, do we actually also on a multilateral level develop something that is easy to understand, that people want to be part of, that is embarrassing if you are not really performing well regarding transformations, and that is also participatory enough so that lots of people can input. So it's not kind of only the universities who would bring in the data, because at the moment, with the way of data managing, we could actually do it in a much more participatory way. So the two things: changing the perspective, looking at what's already happening and strengthening that. And the second is using data in a positive way and developing an indicator system for the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I think this jives very well with the evidence-based sort of application of knowledge to policy that Gustavo was calling for. We've heard in throughout the day and yesterday, as well as in a couple of comments in this session, about the importance of a redesigned vision for multilateralism. So one of the questions that I think showed some interest from the different speakers in our poll in advance of this session was, what guiding principles should really be underpinning the redesign of 21st century multilateral institutions, as well as multilateral processes, I would say, to better prepare humanity for better coordinated social evolution. So I'd like to throw that question out there to anybody who feels like biting on that one. It's a really crucial one. David, please.
I guess I go back to my lifelong, some of you may not know, but I spent 30 years in the military. I built a lot of bridges. I destroyed a lot of bridges. And I know that one of the most important things about bridges, they're just a monument to the gap unless there's good access to them and good exits from them. And part of that is the issue of being ready, anticipation. And I hope I've just written in the chat room here, more and more countries are allowing 16-year-olds to vote. I'm curious how many 16-year-olds are in this conference.
That's a good question, and I think And one thing I would sort of add before I come to Harpinder next is to and then to Petra is to suggest, of course, that we don't build bridges without knowing what each of the anchoring points are. Right? We know where we are in the present. We know where we need to head up. At least we have to have a pretty good idea about that. So I think that dovetails nicely with the point that you just made. Please, Harpinder, for if you could, 30 seconds or so, and then I'd like to go to Petra.
A big one for me is voice, inclusion of voice, right? Diverse voices is really fundamental. And secondly, transparency around how decisions are made and how we are then delivering what is working, what isn't working as well. We really need to ensure that there is greater inclusion of the different voices, but also the different challenges that people are facing as well. So those are two in particular that I'm going to highlight. I know others will pick up some of the other ones as well.
Thanks very much. And I'll point out, just before I go to Petra, that Gustavo has uploaded a link to the UNESCO publication, Who Bears the Cost? Addressing Inequalities from Climate Change and Climate Action, which I'd like to draw everyone's attention to in the chat window. Please, Petra.
Yeah, just add, I go with you with the principles. I would like to add too. The one is definitely de-siloing, because multilateral organizations are very, very siloed, and that is kind of reinforcing the old paradigm. And the second is looking at organizational structures that actually learn from movements. So it is the network approach and of course, transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, etc. So that is extremely important element, important principle.
Thanks very much. Maybe I'd like to spontaneously address a question it's a riff on a question I saw in the Q&A in this session from Jerome, who asked about synergetic relations among nations. But I also wonder about synergetic relations, not only among nations, but between intergovernmental structures and processes and those that are not based in governments. And so what I wonder there is, should we be thinking more creatively and innovatively about not only bridging gaps, but what are in those gaps that are potentially resources that we've missed? So in other words, the goal shouldn't necessarily be get over those gaps, but aren't there potentially very, very valuable knowledge, action capacities represented by those gaps that we have to be better about including and bringing in? So anyway, over to, it looked like I'd like to, we really only have a minute or two left. So I'd like to invite last comments, 20, 30 seconds each from each of you. And I'm going to put you on the spot. So Harpinder, I saw that you were nodding before, and that it might be unfair to you, but I assume that accompanies the thought. So over to you, please.
Thank you. I think it's innovation and experimentation. That's the thought that came to mind when you were mentioning the gaps for me. And I think what is really now needed is that governance innovation. We need to really put that into practice. We really need to think about not just fixing broken systems. We need to really focus on how do we replace them with systems that can deliver on common challenges and reflect our shared future. So that's what came to mind, Stephen. And the one thing I would also say is, goes back to my previous point about it's not just what we do, it's also about how we resource the future, how we make sure who's at the decision-making table, who is included in shaping that world that we want. I'll leave you with that thought.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to now go back to, if I could, Petra, and then Gustavo, and then to David for any final last comments, inviting you to make them before we wrap. What thought do you want to leave us all with, all of the audience with, and the rest of the conference participants as we move forward over the next couple of days?
Just in short, understand what life-affirming systems are and organize around that particular theme and topic in that particular paradigm. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And Gustavo?
I would say build bridges, but not like Kevin was saying, with the ones that don't connect. That are just monuments between bridges that really connect disciplines, ways of thinking, paradigms, points of view. The only way. I think it's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And David, I guess this gives you the final word among our panelists.
Then a bit of humor. Yes, we have a lot of gaps, but there are so many ways and means and things that are the debris that we no longer need that we can fill them with. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're a few minutes over time, so I'm going to have to wrap this up now. But I would like to suggest that I think that we saw signs of very rich ideas, a number of which I think can be proactively and constructively followed up on when we begin to think about what kinds of innovations in inclusivity and innovations in partnership and collaboration that can be built as the basis for implementing new approaches to global transformations, social transformations. So I'm very much looking forward to how we begin to move more and more in that direction, opening that discussion up and seeing where we can begin to be putting forward concrete, specific how-to suggestions and recommendations in the continuation of these discussions. So I want to thank everyone in this dynamic and very thought-provoking panel, and I want to thank once again Gary and the entire World Academy of Art and Science team for creating the space for this important conversation. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
And thanks for joining us.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good morning, Jerry.
Good morning. Hi, Mariana.
Hi, hello.
Hello, Mariana.
I haven't
Nice.
heard back from Ben, so I don't know. I haven't heard from him a couple of days. I sent him 2 emails. So Ben may not be with us. We'll see.
So that would mean more minutes for you both.
That's the theory. Or I could, I'm not going to, but I could do Ben's part, but I won't.
And for Paul.
And what?
Yeah.
And for Paul Werbos also. Some minutes more for Paul
I
Werbos.
assume Paul will be coming in. Well, you saw that he did a video recording.
Yes, 7 minutes.
Yeah. Of course, you told him 5, but nevertheless.
Jerry, did you receive my email from
Yes, I did.
yesterday? Yeah.
Yeah, so they haven't responded back yet. In any case, it's in the Kremlin, so they can mess around with. Hopefully, they'll give it to somebody that knows what they're talking about.
I don't know. They were quite suspicious. As I told you, I've received tons of questions and I responded to them, but they promised to point somebody from an institute of AI. But it's almost a month since our meeting and I haven't received anything since then.
Well, the key thing is that they realized they were not ignored. Ivan, what we're talking about is that Russia has been the naysayer from the very beginning in the Security Council.
Yes,
so I
you
didn't put
mentioned that
anybody on.
yesterday.
And so I didn't put anybody on the AGI panel because I don't want to sit there and have an argument for like 3 months. However, by having Mariana then contacted some folks through the president, Bulgaria, to Medvedev, the former president, number 2 guy now,
Mhm.
about saying, hey, who's going to be the AGI liaison? So this way, at least some of the system knows that they were not ignored, and that's important, I think.
Yeah, and they called us that we are a representative of enemies countries. And they asked me several times if we want a Russian representative. And I told them this is not a question of war because it's beyond current situation. It is about the future of humanity. But
Yes.
they really were quite suspicious and
Yeah, well, we'll see.
And who will be the representative?
we still don't know, but I asked to be appointed by Putin and Medvedev because we need this person to represent the official authorities of Russian Federation.
Okay.
I just realized the participants can hear what we're saying. Oops. Well, nothing's classified.
Yeah, yeah.
At least people
there
know where.
You speak about the document because I would like to speak about ethics, how important it is.
Sure.
But I will add something if you need any kind of extent of the thesis.
And on the second round, hopefully we'll get there. The second round, we can put in whatever we forgot to say.
Okay.
So Paul, are you there?
You gotta turn on your video, or else you won't be seen. There you go.
Okay.
It's a nice shot of your scalp. There you
Hello,
go.
Paul. Good to see you.
All right.
So it's all of us. It's 5 p.m. in the European Central Time, and we still miss Ben Gertzel. But I think we might start if you are all fine. Okay.
Yep.
So good afternoon and good morning to everyone wherever you are in the world. This is the session on the near future of AI, artificial general intelligence. My name is Ibon Zugasti, and I'm moderating this session. I will brief you in the aim and the background of this session a little bit and introduce you the speakers we have today. So the background of the session is that the AGI race between the United States and China, including several corporations, has attracted more capital than any other investment in history. Properly managed AGI promises extraordinary benefits in all fields, leading to a magnificent future for all. However, without national and international governance, AGI is expected to create the greatest concentration of power the world has ever known. This is expected to create non-biological species more intelligent than humanity and beyond our control. Current efforts for national AGI licensing and international controls will be discussed as possible solutions, plus the prospects for a decentralized approach to the development and deployment of AGI. So our panelists are today here, starting with Jerome Glenn, who is the chair of the AGI panel of the UN Council of Presidents of the General Assembly, organizational governance of AI member of IEEE, and CEO of the Millennium Project, together with a fellow of the World Academy. Mariana Todorova, Bulgarian representative in UNESCO's Intergovernmental Group on AI Ethical Frameworks, member of the AGI panel of the UN Council of Presidents of the General Assembly, and chair of the Bulgarian node of the Millennium Project, and also a fellow at the Academy. And then Paul Werbos, adjunct professor at the Kammer Institute Center for AI and Autonomous Systems, beyond other things. And we don't still have Ben Gortzel, who was in the agenda, but it seems that couldn't make it today. So as time is running, I suggest that we start already with the session. We will have like 2 rounds. On the first round, we will be discussing the issue and framing the issue a little bit on and why we are focusing on AGI and why we think focusing on AGI is so relevant. And then on the second round, panelists will have another 5 minutes each, or maybe a little bit more, because we have one less to address this big issue humanity is facing for the next few years. So let's start with the session. We will start with Jerome Glenn. You have 5 to 7 minutes to frame the AGI race, please.
Okay, thank you, Ivan. The real problem, I think, is extraordinary confusion. Because you'll get one person saying, well, AI does this. And someone says, no, AI does this. And it's just this confused mess, because there are different kinds of AI. Not all AIs are created equal. And to continue the confusion, well, to oversimplify, you've got narrow, general, and super. We're sort of in the transition between the narrow and the general right now. But to keep everybody further confused, we have the phrase generative AI. That people think, oh, that's general AI. No, it's not. It's generative. It's in the transition to it. It's more advanced than the simple AI. And then along comes general purpose AI. Well, that was a term that was used a lot by Yashua Bengio in the paper for the Paris AI Action Conference recently. But in there, he very clearly says, this is not artificial general intelligence. To me, the difference is that when AI is able to determine that it cannot answer the question through whatever dialogue, whatever sort of things being going on, like Grok 4s, because of this interaction going on, then it says, okay, what do I need to know in order to do that? And then it searches and rewrites its own code. Once that recursive learning, once that kind of learning is occurring, we think that it will have a lot of recursive learning. So it gets smarter and smarter and smarter and smarter across the board until it finally gets so smart it's out of our control. And that's super intelligence to me. The distinction between general and super, to me, the distinction is you don't know what it's doing. Well, we don't know what it's doing in simple stuff as well, but it's beyond our control. The analogy that I would use is a human being growing up. A little kid, you tell it what clothes to wear, what to eat, you're in charge. You say, diagnose cancer, write a report, do a press conference. You do it, and it does it, the little kid. Then when they're a teenager or an adolescent, they're trying on roles. Sometimes they got purple hair, sometimes they're doing all kinds of strange things, but you're more or less in control. You can say that they can use the car, not use the car, where you gotta sleep here. There's a bit of control. And then when they're adult, obviously you're no longer in control. So I find that people sort of understand that. And there's so between a child and an adult, a child and a teenager, this is where you can have parents know. This is where you can shape the child. Because once they're already a teenager, beyond that, you may not have much influence anymore. This is going back to Mariana with the values and so on. So the values, getting that part done, is between the narrow and the general. And that's where we are right now. So now is the time to panic. And the thing is that how AGI gets developed is how it'll emerge into super. So if we're going to have super turn out to be okay and co-evolve with us, then right now is the important time. And we don't have a single rule to prevent all of the nightmares that people have talked about. There's not a single country with AGI rules. There's no UN acting right now at this. We're going to talk about this in a little bit. And there is a study, and I'll put it in the chat how people can get a hold of it and the recommendations. But right now is the time to panic over the next. And I figure, as it's a wild guess with a little bit of education, I think we got a 3-year deadline. 3-year deadline to get nation states to have licensing systems and to have the UN have a international coordination of verifying these licensing systems and an overall early warning system and implementation system. That is impossible by any logical analysis of sociology and political science. But we have to try. That's what it was during the Cold War. In the Cold War, most people involved thought it was inevitable that we're going to have it. But you had to try. The moral position, and this one's the same thing. It may be impossible to get all this stuff done, but the only moral position, in my judgment, is we have to try. We have to take it deadly seriously, which it is not being done right now.
Excellent. Jerry, thank you very much. I was actually sharing the link to this AGI research by the Millennium Project, and thank you very much for having this wonderful initial framing. And we will now turn into Mariana Todorova, who is also a member of the Millennium Project, and will extend a little bit on this framing of the AGI challenge. Please, Mariana, you have 6-7 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Yvonne. The comments from Jerry were extremely important and substantial, and I would like to invite all the people that are watching our session to look for our document, AGI document, at the page of UNCPGA or at the Millennium Project page, because they will see the framework of it, and this is the more political approach. Today, I would like to speak more about values and ethics, because for me, the key to interaction, governance, and control of AGI lies in ethics. And we stand not at the edge of a mere technological shift, but at the threshold of civilizational redefinition. And most of the people actually don't understand that this is not just a technological shift, but a kind of new shift of how we interact with each other and with these new entities. Throughout human history, every major invention, from the plow to the steam engine, from electricity to the internet, all these technologies or inventions have amplified the scale and speed of human action. But AGI will not merely extend human capability, it will reconfigure power, memory, cognition, and even our will on a planetary scale. Because AGI is not just next step in computation. As you said, it's an emergence of a non-biological entity that will integrate, mirror, and surpass the totality of human knowledge. And paradoxically, it may know us more intimately than we know ourselves. It will decode the deep structure of our cognition. It will track our behavioral trends. It will analyze our biological signals and model the unfolding of entire cultures. And what is most important, it will mirror our rationality and irrationality alike, and not only reflecting, but also amplifying the interior structure of our human condition. And yet there is an existential risk, which is value misalignment, because AGI will not become a moral agent simply because it knows the rules, because morality is not a data set. There is no universally accepted ethical language that can be formalized and uploaded. And as our colleagues in our panel, Stuart Russell, Joshua Bengio, and also Elisa Yudkowsky have emphasized, Human behavior is contextual, it's inconsistent, and also often ethically compromised. And it's not a reliable source for machines to learn from. And this is the main challenge of value fragility. Even slight misalignment between AGI and human values could lead us to catastrophic consequences. And we face a paradox because in our quest to align AGI with human values, we must first ask whether we ourselves are aligned. What do we embody as individuals, as societies, as a species? Do we exhibit moral clarity, long-term vision, even now in this crucial moment from the transition from AI to AGI? And do we have the capacity for self-reflection worthy of being mirrored in the architecture of AGI? Because we cannot train artificial consciousness to be compassionate if we not institutionalize compassion in our own systems. We cannot encode justice if our own civilization remained mired in inequality and fragmentation. And in this light, AGI becomes not only a technological challenge, but a moral mirror, because it reflects our maturity or lack thereof. And this is not a race between technologies, between nations to be geopolitically advanced. It's a race between our ethical evolution and the acceleration of artificial agency. And if we aim to guide AGI toward decentralized wisdom and ethical clarity, we must model those very capacities ourselves. But at this moment, it seems like an unattainable utopia, which is why in my next intervention, I will propose more concrete ideas. This would just like some challenging inputs and questions.
So thank you very much, Mariana, for framing also from the ethics and moral perspective. And I see that we are having a lot of comments in the chat and also even questions. We will have some time, hopefully, at the end of this session for questions and answers. And now we moved into Paul Werbos. So we also end this first round with the same question, Paul. What is the status of the current AGI race, and what is the need for international governance frameworks? So
do you have the video, or should I share?
Please share it. Yes.
Yeah, if
you're sharing. Okay. Gotta be share. Okay, in that case, I will do that. Hope it works.
Yep, it's coming up.
We're seeing the slide. Yes. Okay.
See the slide? We're not hearing it. We got to run it.
Yeah.
It is running, but to share, I have only the video, not the slides.
Maybe you clicked on the wrong one. Got the slides rather than the video.
It's not showing the slides.
We're seeing the slides.
We're seeing the
slides, not the video.
slide. Yeah.
Well, why don't you just go ahead? Because you're
yes, please go ahead, Paul. Do you want to show your slides, Paul, or do you want to just do a summary of your
he's clicking it on. Oh, there he goes. Now he's got it.
There you go.
Whoop, it started to come up, then it went back. It started to come up, then it went back. That's strange.
Yep. Paul, we cannot listen to your video. So do you want to talk?
Just start now. Can you hear?
No.
No.
No, we're still seeing your slides static.
But you don't hear me?
No. We
No.
hear your voice. We hear you talking. We don't hear the video.
Okay. Okay, let me saying misuse of artificial intelligence, #1 threat to the existence of the human species in this century. If you go to buildaworld.org, there's a lot more detail about all of these grand challenges. Next 10 years, there are new threats in AGI which are threatening our very existence. The next slide, a long talk about an hour on Korean national television in 2009. This talk is probably available still on YouTube. Real thing about artificial general intelligence, it's to come up with lots of verbal definitions which don't mean much because they're all words. But there's also a lot of new mathematics. And the new mathematics tells us that AGI is radically different from what most people believe. There are many, many applications coming out. Maybe the scariest thing today is people making policy. Can you hear?
Yeah, we can hear you speaking. Keep
Yes.
going.
Yes, we can hear you.
Just because the video is playing for you, Paul, doesn't mean we're hearing the video. So we're hearing you as a person speaking. We're not hearing the video. Skip the
Did you hear
video.
that?
Keep going.
Yep.
Can you hear?
Paul, time's moving
Oh.
on.
Yes, Paul, please move on and keep on talking.
Okay. Okay, so these three levels are not exactly what Jerry said, but we're pretty compatible. Problem of confusion out there in policy in the world. There are three different levels of artificial intelligence. As Jerry said, generative AI, GAI, many policymakers are badly confused because they think in the United States, the chatbots really don't have intelligence or consciousness. People who use these chatbots know that they do not have consciousness. But there are chatbots which do have AGI coming from China, not in the United States, but there are people in China who in 2014 heard about real AGI from a conference in 2014 where Ben Goertzel and I both spoke. Tsinghua University and the NSF of China began on a huge program. For that meeting, the US was 10 years ahead. Now the US is 10 years behind and China is 20 years ahead. And American experts on AI are badly confused. They don't know what kind of power exists in China. They have conversational systems which do have AGI. There are many, many levels of AGI. It's not that simple. So as this shows, AGI, real AGI, is an area I led at the National Science Foundation with deep learning and reinforcement learning. The IEEE gave me its highest technical award in 2022 to honor how I discovered these fields. I really started the AGI, brought it to China in 2014, and now they're ahead. I didn't intend to give them a monopoly, but there are political problems here. There are new capabilities now in process this year. There have been breakthroughs this year which go towards what you call superintelligence. So now, problems. There are many, many challenges to policymaking, many urgent challenges, but there are only three that are really threatening the existence of human species in the next 10 years. If you're worried about survival of the human species, short term, these three threats are the ones we really need to understand deeply. We need policies which probe very deeply into the needs of these. The three areas of threats, the very existence The threats are war, currency, cybersecurity. These are the big three that we have to get right. There are lots of Mickey Mouse things that lawyers rightly address, but if we want to stay alive, what we need to focus on and get right are the things connected to war, money, cybersecurity. For war, I keep citing the Security Council meeting 2023, the session on AI. Do you guys know the UN has not yet agreed to the recommendations, international effort to see the sky? But I believe that such an international effort is by far the best hope of our surviving this threat to human existence. Part of this involves war, cybersecurity. It's not just missiles, it's also drones. The technology is changing very radically and very quickly. I don't know if any of you ever saw the Terminator 2 and 3 movies. At the time, they looked like science fiction. It scares me how much the news on the ground is just like the Terminator 3 movie. It is really scary. Drones can do, and what AI can do, way beyond what the average person imagines. And yet it's just like the movie, and it threatens her existence. The best hope for overcoming that through a certain kind of international cooperation, like what Guterres was calling for in that UN Security Council session. And that would be a place to develop the technology in an open, transparent, and benign way. To say that money and cybersecurity are important too is sort of an understatement, but I think I've just now used up my time.
So thank you very much, Paul. You already mentioned some of the proposals, and we are actually going to move ahead into the second round, where we want to discuss about concrete proposals from people that really know about this complex issue. And I would like to start with Jerome Glenn, asking him about why do you think national licensing solutions are so relevant. Also, what about decentralized solutions like people like Ben Goertzel are suggesting this new decentralized structures and networks as a response to coming AGI, and of course about your work together with Mariana on the UN Council and what are the concrete proposals you are addressing there. So Jerry, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you. As I believe we are all in agreement, the world is pretty confused about all this stuff. And we've got to have a global conversation. And that's a nice phrase, but how do you do that for real? And I think the most cost-effective time to impact way to do it is to have a special session of the UN General Assembly, specifically on AGI, not just AI, because there's AI, they're going to repeat the conference in Paris and just talk about the present tense, but specifically on AGI. Why is this important? Because the ministries of foreign affairs and the ambassadors to the UN in New York will have to go to their own country experts. Each country will have to go to their own AGI experts, find out what is our position, what are we supposed to say? And that conversation between the politician and the AI expert worldwide can only be stimulated, in my judgment, by a special UN General Assembly session. So, action item number 1, for everybody listening here, please write your Minister of Foreign Affairs and say, please ask for a General Assembly session on AGI specifically. That's one thing to get that done. On the national licensing system, there was a meeting in Montevideo, Uruguay, over almost 2 years ago, where parliamentary representatives from 70 countries said they would work on AGI licensing. I have not seen one word on one piece of paper on a licensing authorization. People talked about it, but I haven't seen anything being done. So one of the things that the people on this watching this can do is contract your local politicians, your senators, congressmen, parliamentary men, and say, please begin to look at, have hearings, bring in some experts, what should a law be to authorize a licensing system? We don't let somebody drive a car without a license. We certainly don't let them buy a nuclear weapon without a licensing procedure. But here we're allowing people to create anything and release it eventually on the internet without any procedure. So that's the second thing. The reason we need, and this is unusual, to put a licensing system in place before it exists. Now, there's a guy named LaCoon who said, how can you do that? Because you can't design a safety belt for a car that's not here yet. Fine, let's design a bunch of safety belts to take a look at the whole range of possibilities, which we have to do, because as Paul has pointed out, there's going to be a lot of variations of this as well. So we need a licensing system to be put into place before it happens, because if we don't have it before it happens, then it gets out on the internet, it recursively learns very fast, and there's going to be many of these things out of Moscow, out of Washington, out of Beijing, out of different corporations, and they will interact with each other. And what are they going to talk about? Who knows? In any case, that's the key one on that one. On the decentralization, I would rather your listeners do a Google search on Singularity Net, one word, and then Ben will probably get there. Ben Gertzel, even if you misspell it, internet will correct it for you. And see what's being done. I don't want to misrepresent it, but what I do want to say is that the idea of large language models, more stuff, is only one approach. And new kinds of algorithms and new approaches is still another approach. The interactions of these things, another approach. And then Ben is saying, but that's still centralization. That's still a single corporation or a single government centralizing all this power. And so he's trying to create a decentralized system so that many different players are interacting together to create it. And I don't want to go into more detail about that because I don't want to misrepresent Ben. But the key thing I want to leave here is there's a variety of ways to get to AGI. There's not one way. And we have to have a national licensing system to take a look at that range. Just like there's a bunch of different kinds of cars, we still have a single licensing system for driving, but we have a bunch of different cars.
Excellent, Jerry. I think you already gave very good proposals, and I would like to ask Mariana to continue a little bit, maybe also on the discussions you are having at the UN Council. You are also talking about an observatory, I think, and some other proposals. Please go ahead.
Yes, as a continuation of Jerry's thoughts, I would like to underline that our reflections actually follow the presumption that AGI will be what we expect it to be. It might be the extended version of generative models and large language models, but it also might be a new hardware fruit following the concept of evolutionary algorithms. It might be a product of emergent property. It might be a result of evolutionary algorithms or combined with quantum algorithms processed on supercomputers. We still don't know. But what if it is something we cannot yet imagine? So we also must consider that kind of scenarios. But as I said before, what we could expect is that AGI will be capable of recursive self-improvement, general purpose reasoning, and unprecedented influence across every domain of human life. And this is the starting point that should be reflected on any kind of governance and control mechanism. What really worries me is that the path we are currently on, which is a geopolitical race driven by secrecy, competition, and corporate ambition, may be the most dangerous trajectory that we could imagine. So if AGI emerges within this vacuum, without oversight, without coordination, and without shared responsibility, it will definitely escape our control. So we should speak about governance, and we should speak about some general principles. And that's why we suggested observatory that might evolve in UN agency. And we suggest some principles to be embedded and embodied there. So the first essential step is, of course, national AGI licensing, because every country should seriously consider to adopt a regulatory framework that probably will follow the document suggested by UN. This means that each country should certify AGI models that exceed a certain capability threshold, and conducting independent safety audits and adversarial testing, and limiting the training of powerful models outside licensed environments, because in other scenario we'll lose control. And the second pillar that we should consider is a kind of international treaty that will hopefully follow the UN document. And of course, we must think and act beyond borders. What is needed is a binding global treaty, because UN documents are usually with no non-binding consequences and effects, and it might be a kind of Geneva Convention, but Geneva Convention for cognition, or for AGI and human relationship. And such treaty should definitely ban dangerous application like autonomous lethal AGI or self-replicating agents beyond human supervision. And it would define universal safety thresholds. It should standardize alignment metrics and establish reciprocal inspections and disclosure mechanisms, just as we do in nuclear arms and treaties. And of course, the third principle is transparency. No governance system can function without visibility. And that's why we must implement mandatory AGI transparency protocols, including full audits, trails for training data, model updates, and decision walks, because reproducibility must become a requirement for all safety critical systems, and real-time safety monitoring, including digital black boxes embedded into AGI architecture, because as you know, even now AI is acting like a black box. And we must have a mechanism that flag anomalies before they cascade into catastrophe. And these tools and insight must be shared across nations, sectors, and communities, because safety is not a competitive advantage. It's a global public good. But what we see now is just the controversy of this concept. So, and I believe that we must cultivate a decentralized status, because beyond national walls and international accords, we must create space for open source alignment research, grassroots ethical dialogue, and civic participation in the shaping of AGI, because most of the civic organizations are now excluded from this debate. Because I believe governance is not just regulation, it's inclusion, it could be a culture, it's a conscience, but still this is like utopian suggestions. Everything now is in the hands of corporations and some governance agencies. And I believe that the choice is still ours. if AGI will reflect wisdom, humility, and shared responsibility, or it will reflect our greed, secrecy, and rivalry. It's now the time to make this shift and to build this very important base.
Thank you very much, Mariana, for those very concrete proposals that are included in the report that we are sharing of the UN Council of Presidents of the United Nations General Assembly, where you are working together with Jerry. And well, let's move now to Paul. You'll have the last 5-6 minutes before we go to the questions and answers. We have 10 minutes for all of that. So Paul, you already made some proposals in the chat, and please try to explain your points on this platform to address the issue.
Thank you. This issue of how to design a new system is utterly critical, but what I wonder is why the screen sharing is suddenly not working. I was going to show you just one slide.
We're seeing, Paul, we're seeing your screen just fine.
Oh, okay. So it's just one slide, and this represents a major program that the National Science Foundation put out in 2007, which I think is critical to what we have to do next. As I said in the chat, you have the chat. As I said in the chat, what we really need is what I would call a cyber social contract. To see the design for a new integrated platform for the world. We need a platform to implement the Security Council vision. And to build such a platform, we need real design and real technology, not just words. And the world needs to come together on this new technology. And if you really see the slide, it points to an NSF program, which is a research manifesto. It was agreed by all the research program directors at NSF. This is how we understand and build real intelligence, how we understand it in brains and how we build it in AGI. That's up on the web. There are certain major elements. The discussion at NSF discussed how real AGI can be used for space technology, for sustainability on Earth, and human potential. Those were the three main emphases. And of course, defense against nuclear weapons, that's part of sustainability. The technical areas we went into great detail were what I call cognitive prediction and value formation. And it really comes back to von Neumann's idea of utilitarianism. Many people talk about the greatest good for the greatest number. Jeremy Bentham, people have talked about that in this conference. But Jeremy Bentham's ideas were just a stage in the evolution of our modern understanding, which came from John von Neumann. And that's the foundation that we could use to actually design and build this kind of new international system that we need. So, needless to say, since I did a whole research program on this, we could talk about it for years if you had the time, but you don't have the time right now. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Paul.
So thank you very much, Paul. And I think this opens the opportunity also for participants to make direct questions. If any of you want to answer those comments or questions in the chat or in the questions and answers section, David Booth and Alexander Sidansek were already pointing out some of the issues. So, do any of you, Jerry, Mariana, Paul, want to comment those?
Yeah, one thing I forgot to mention on the action item list is that if you can find out who is the speechwriter for your president's address to the General Assembly this September, it would be nice if they would throw in there, hey, we think the future of AI requires a UN General Assembly special session. Because if we get maybe 5 or 10 countries to put that in there, that increases the likelihood of a General Assembly. The report was received by the president of the General Assembly, was agreed to and all that. But that's one thing for him to say, I accept it, and that's okay. It's another thing to call for General Assembly because he's a politician. He wants other countries to like say, I want to do this. I mean, politicians don't like to act on their own. They want to build a coalition. So the way to do that, I would suggest, is if you can get a hold of who the speechwriter is and engage with them somehow. This can't be simply an academic nice discussion. This has got to move into the action phase because as Paul has also said, this is the time to act. A little bit later down the road, it's a little bit too late.
Yes, Jerry. I think this was also mentioned in the chat. This emergency situation we are in related to this big issue. Is there anything else you want to comment on, Mariana or Paul, related to the comments in the chat? There is a direct question also by Alexander to Jerry, but Mariana, anything you want to add on your side?
Actually, I'm trying to follow to see all the questions, but it's hard for me to concentrate at this very moment. But I also want to call for actions and activity and for people to make this distinction between AI and AGI, because most of people have the notion that this is the generative models and actually don't see the urgency of the issue and the problem. And we should also consider another phenomenon. This is the resistance of cultural shift. Most of the people are already tired of all technologies, all applications, so they don't care what is really happening. They don't follow the debate, the real problems. And actually, when I speak in front of different kind of auditors, it's very dependent on the generation representatives. For example, generations at an alpha are quite positive. They don't see any kind of risks. And in opposite, generation X, baby boomers, think that this is the end of human civilization. And this already creates a kind of generational gaps and misunderstanding. We don't have one homogenic dialogue about this issue. So these kind of discussions are very important too.
So I want to agree emphatically. When I was getting my PhD, I had ideas about the rise and fall of civilizations. Harvard wanted me to write my thesis on that. Instead, I came up with a deep learning and neural nets because I felt it was easier, and I felt to understand the rise and fall of civilizations required knowledge I didn't have. Since then, I have learned a bit more about the knowledge I didn't have. I now say my two holy books are von Neumann, Games and Economic Behavior, and the other one is Carl Jung's Red Book. I believe that psychiatry is becoming more and more important to understand how politics is working and what we have to do to survive, because we need to heal. And Jung might say we have a collective intelligence and we have a kind of schizophrenia, a split, a conflict within ourselves. And the real question is, how do we heal our collective intelligence and stop killing each other? How do we attain a higher level of consciousness as humans? But given the way politics works, we might need the help of AI and of higher mammals like the best dolphins. We might need help in order to become sane enough to avoid killing ourselves, which is what we're in the process of doing now. But yes, I have learned psychiatry has a lot to say about world politics. Especially there was a longitudinal study of Harvard graduates by a guy named Vaillant. Longitudinal Vaillant. And he talked about which characteristic neuroses affect the quality of life of Harvard graduates, and they are very relevant to our political leaders today.
Yeah. Oh, Ivan, if I can add a little thing.
Sure, Jerry.
Eric Schmidt, everybody knows, former CEO of Google, had a very nice interview last week, and in there he figures that the estimate for just the United States for extra electricity to take care of all this future forms of AI over the next 20 years would be 92 gigawatts of power. 92 gigawatts. Now, a nuclear reactor is like around 1 gigawatt. So he's talking about, to meet that demand in the United States alone, you'd need 92 new nuclear power plants. I don't think you're going to be able to build that many that fast. So if there's a competition between human electricity requirement and AGI or super AI, with my point, if there's competition for the electric, who do you think is going to win that argument? That's an example of one of those existential threats, is if it's a showdown between human and AGI on electricity, AGI wins, and you knock out electricity in a lot of places around the world, and you can imagine what can happen.
DARPA ran a major research activity a few years ago on why is it that mammal brains need so much less electric power than the present generation of computers. And I've had friends who received money from that project. They got to see what was going on. My conclusion is that we do know new technology in the world of quantum electrophotonic technology, which explains a lot of why brains are so much more efficient. And if we use it, this power problem, and I hope if we get this new international program, the whole world will share it. But we got to give it to the world. We got to build up this program.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. Yeah, Paul. And
one other little
to...
addition is it
sure.
looks like the chips coming out of NVIDIA is if we can, before we talk about having different software to control and manage all this sort of stuff, but it looks like hardware might be able to be the real governing system of this, because if it can refuse to run a software, then the governor of it might very well be hardware itself, and that could be a saving grace if we don't get countries to
hardware can solve these problems. That's what my new patent is about. I did show 3 levels of AI. There is a third level, and we have mathematics. We just got to go ahead and implement it.
That's right. Because if countries can't do this, it would be nice if they do. But if they can't, then if the hardware, you got to have the hardware to run this.
Oh, yeah.
And if you don't, and if that hardware has the government built in, then maybe that's our saving grace.
Well, quantum hardware can solve this problem.
I just wanted to point out that David Wood was so kind to share the link to the video Jerome Glenn was mentioning on the interview with Eric Schmidt, which I think is one of the best interviews to understand this big issue and potential solutions. So I think we are already running out of time. If you have any final comment, any final remark, any of you, Jerry, Mariana, Paul, just maybe a reminder to everyone that you can contact your governments or your ministries of foreign affairs, secretaries of state.
My government, the big issue we have in my state is Trump's plan to cut back basic science. And a lot of what I'm talking about, we had the capability to do in NSF. And the changes they've made endanger the whole world. And so I pray that UNESCO, maybe in connection with what you're doing, UNESCO might be charged to reinvent the best that NSF ever was on a global level. We need that very hardcore scientific base. And if we can't get it from Donald Trump, then what the hell? We needed to do it on a global level anyway. As a Quaker, I sometimes say, hey, maybe that's God's plan. It's supposed to be international, for God's sake.
So that's a wonderful proposal, Paul, to have a global NSF. And so either UNESCO, whoever could help in that mission will be very welcome. And hopefully we will have a global NSF before that later. So let me end this session by thanking our wonderful panelists today. This is not the end of the conversation. This is just the continuation. And I really encourage everyone to contact the Millennium Project if you want to continue with this conversation, and send us your questions and remarks and your willingness to help in this very, very important vision for the future of humanity. Thank you very much to all for attending, and I wish you a wonderful conference from now on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, is anybody here?
Hello, ma'am. The panelists are joining in a minute. The session will start in 4 minutes.
So I'm getting my coffee if nobody minds. We've just had an incredible session on AI.
Hello. Hello. Hello,
Hello.
Amanda. How are you?
Hello,
I'm
Anitra. Sorry.
Anitra.
Hello, lovely to meet you. Thank you for all your help. And I've just come from another panel. Hello, Nico, Paul.
hi.
Nico, is it okay to call you Nico?
Yes, yes, please, Nico.
Great, thank
Yes.
you. And I just want to make sure that I've got Theodosiou correctly pronounced.
Yes.
And
Perfect.
Anitra
Perfect.
Thorhaug.
Yeah. Yes.
Thorhaug,
Fine.
fantastic, fantastic. And Paul, great to see you. We're just missing one. And do we have Imran with us? Who's
Ted will be here shortly.
That sounds fantastic. We've got 1 minute to go. And Anitra, what I'm going to do is set the scene with that little introduction that I sent everybody. And then I'll be passing to you as the first speaker to share your slides.
Yes, I have them up. Let me just try it very quickly. No.
And WAAS admin, oh, here we go. Here's Imran. That's fantastic. That's great, Imran. Fantastic that you're here. Thank you very much. And Imran, if there are any difficulties, Nico has clearly solved his problem of camera and mic, which is great. Yes, we can see your slides, Anitra. That's excellent too. So
there's
Imran,
Ted. Ted is just arrived.
perfect. So Imran, when Ted comes on, can you please take us live? Let us know.
So I managed to find the right way in. Thank you for letting me in.
Yes, it's complicated. You have to join via the normal link, and then the WAAS administration takes you as a panelist.
Okay. Well,
so we're now
we
live.
succeeded. There was just a little communication issue on the way.
Oh, well, it's wonderful to have you with us, Ted. Thank you. And Imran, if you could share the slide with all of the panelists' names and titles, that would be terrific. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. My name is Amanda Ellis. I'm with the Julianne Wrigley Global Futures Laboratory and delighted to be the moderator of today's panel. You'll see a slide coming up from Imran, and that will be showing you all our wonderful speakers today. We have with us Anitra Thorhaug, and I will introduce everybody more fulsomely when they come to speak, who is the president of the Greater Caribbean Energy and Environment Foundation. We have Nico Theodosiou, who is professor at the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. We have Paul Webos, who is adjunct professor with the Kuma Institute Center for AI and Autonomous Systems, and Dr. Ted Manning, who is president of Tourisk Inc. So I'm seeing that slide has not yet come up, so we will launch into our session, which is solutions to reduce ecologically rooted uncertainty and insecurity. And this is certainly the defining issue of our time. We are meeting at what is most consequential. The world population has quadrupled in the last 80 years, and we are now a very big presence on a small planet. Not only is climate change and its consequences increasing at a pace far faster than scientists originally predicted, but global politics are arguably more volatile than at any time since the Cold War, fueled by a rise in both authoritarianism and populism, exacerbated by dis and misinformation spread through social media platforms, and now increasingly accelerated through AI. There's widespread concern about what futures may look like. The US has withdrawn from the Paris Climate Agreement, and there are now over 50 estimated state conflicts. Biodiversity loss is rapidly accelerating. So against this depressing backdrop, Our panel will attempt to make sense of these trends and address solutions to reduce ecologically rooted uncertainty and insecurity. So it's now my great honor to introduce Professor Anitra Thorhug, who not only, as I mentioned earlier, is president for the Greater Caribbean Energy and Environment Foundation, but also the US Club of Rome president and the Yale Institute of Carbon Sequestration lead for solutions that are terrestrial. So Anitra, you have got an illustrious background. We're very grateful to you for agreeing to set the scene on where we are today. If you would like to share your slides, thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to share my slides. And first, I would like to ask the question. I'm going to begin with the question and end with the question. Can the planet Earth be secure if its key ecosystems are insecure? I think that's a very important question. But first, I will share my slides so that you know why I'm saying this and what I'm saying. There we go. Can everybody see that? Yes. All right. So the FAO portion of the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, which has charge of forests and fisheries, has said that 85% of the world's forests have been completely decimated, killed, and degraded by mankind. And what we have left is 15% of the world's forests. Where do we have them? In two major places. One is in the boreal areas of Canada, Alaska, and Russia. And the second is in the tropical area, where we have basically about 28% in Latin America, Central America, and in the Cameroon forests and Congo forests in Africa, and a very small amount in Southeast Asia. One of our important members of the Club of Rome, Costanza, Robert Costanza, has valued with his group, and the red are the important and very valuable ecosystems. And here you see the same place where the forests are in Latin America, value, and you see the boreal forests in Alaska and in Canada being of value, and the Russian forests here. And then you also see the Cameroon forest, Southeast Asia forest, and a tip of the tropical forest in Australia. Where are the remaining mangroves, corals, and seagrass, which are the key underwater ecosystems? And to the left, on the top, is the picture of the mangrove. So you see they range in the Bight of Guinea and up to about Guinea-Bissau in Africa, and in the central between Kenya and South Africa on the East Coast, in the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf of Mexico in Latin America, and in Southeast Asia, basically, and Northern Australia, in Indonesia particularly. These are the corals. The bottom illustration shows where the major corals are. And of course, they're all across this the Pacific Ocean. They're also around Australia and in the Caribbean Sea. And I have been working now for about 50 years on restoring ecosystems and held many conferences on restoring ecosystems. And from that, and from all the experts thinking together, we have degraded about 50,000 kilometers square of mangroves, and we should be putting back 50,000 kilometers square of mangrove. And the cost would probably be about $10 billion. And the good news there is it's done with people from developing countries, because that's where most of the mangroves are. And the same with corals. We've lost about 70,000 kilometers square. It would cost about 30 billion to put them back. Seagrass, we've lost about 100,000 kilometers square, and we should put back 50,000, and that'll cost about 30 billion. And temperate forests are very well known. We've been putting back temperate forests for something like 150 years, and on a smaller scale, more of that. And to put back about 36 kilometers, thousand, no, 36 million, I'm sorry, would cost something like 34 billion, because much of this is done where they're really good technologies. And those are done in the temperate zones, which are North America and Europe and across Eastern Europe. The tropical forests are now being looked at and put back in large amounts. We've lost about 35 million kilometers square, and we should be putting back about 35. And that would cost someplace in the middle 50 billions. So altogether, we should put back about 130 billion. We should put that amount of investment into this, government by government, industry by industry. This is the problem, that we have the technology, but we do not have the political will. And I don't think we have proper plans, government by government, either in the countries that we call newly industrializing or developing countries, nor in giant countries like my own. We do not have a cohesive plan to put back forests, coastal key ecosystems, and underwater systems such as the corals.
Thank you so much, Anitra. Those are wonderful points. And I think when you talk about the costs of restoration, that is an obvious solution. But when we look at the costs of not restoring, they're much greater. So the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, estimates that we get from nature every year somewhere between 95 and $125 trillion in free ecosystem services. And because our very rudimentary economic systems, speaking as an economist, a trained economist, don't take those into account, we use the very old-fashioned and not adequate measure of GDP instead. So thank you for that wonderful overview with some very practical solutions of how
My final question is, can we afford not to regenerate our ecosystems so that we continue to have this degradation, which goes right into your
Absolutely. That is, I think that is the key point. So thank you very much. That was a wonderful beginning with some very practical solutions. We move now to Professor Nicolaos Theodosiou. from the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, who is also the chair of the SDSN, the Sustainable Development Solutions Network. And I know too that, Nico, if I may, you're also with the UN Network Council of Engineers for the Energy Transition. So we're very much looking forward to hearing from you too. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Amanda. Thank you for the introduction. I will try to be brief, but I would like to outline a few things. One of the things that we do in this Sustainable Development Solutions Networks, we are trying to acknowledge the status of each country in their effort to implement the SDGs. So every year we publish a report. And this year we had the same results regarding the two biodiversity SDGs, SDG 14 and 15, life below water and life on land, which are amongst those who are particularly off track. And as a matter of fact, these two goals are by far the most underreported SDGs, which is something that indicates the need for more research and analysis on the ecosystems. So these two goals in particular face major challenges, showing no or very limited progress since 2015 when the SDGs were introduced, mainly due to human-driven pressures, weak governance, the prioritization of short-term economic development over long-term environmental health. There is a global coordination, but enforcement, finance, and political will lag behind the urgency of the environmental crisis. We have overfishing, pollution, especially plastics and microplastics, climate change, and the lack of marine protected areas, which are amongst the most important pressures that aquatic systems face. On the other hand, as Anitra emphasized, deforestation, biodiversity loss, land degradation, weak enforcement, and political will restrain the efforts to improve the implementation of the life on land goal. There is still a huge gap between the ability of high-income countries to meet the SDGs and the challenges faced by the low-income countries to follow the same track. There's a huge gap. While the high-income countries continue to invest within their own borders and disregard the financial and technological barriers that the low-income countries face, global challenges like climate change will continue to expand and impact the whole planet. For example, we expect Africa to reach its energy demand peak by 2050, 2060. If they follow the same path that we did in energy production from carbon-based sources, this will lead to a disaster not only for Africa, but for the whole world. Climate change does not recognize borders. But since this conference is also about peace and security, we need to acknowledge that, as you already mentioned, there are still numerous conflicts around the world. The ongoing, for more than 3 years now, war in Ukraine is not just a humanitarian and geopolitical crisis, it is also an ecological disaster. It will take decades to restore the damaged ecosystems, to clean up toxic sites, and to safely demine contaminated areas. Environmental justice and recovery must be a key part of any long-term peace and reconstruction effort. Shelling, bombings, missile strikes, everything that we hear on TV every day have destroyed forests, wetlands, nature reserves. There are minefields in both land and the Black Sea, which is something very, very troubling and dangerous ecosystems. Clearance will take decades. That's certain. The war in Ukraine has unleashed an ecological disaster. We need to acknowledge that. Despite, I repeat, the humanitarian issue. That's the first priority, of course. We have widespread deforestation, soil and water contamination, destruction of ecosystems, long-term health risks, and recovery will require international support, reconstruction funds, environmental remediation, and comprehensive demining efforts, probably spanning decades. And just a final remark, Amanda, I followed a panel discussion where you participated yesterday, and you emphasized the need to upgrade the SDGs. I totally agree with this statement. And the SDGs are not written in stone. They can and need to be reviewed, revised, updated, and of course upgraded. On the other hand, they are a very good effort to face these global challenges. We don't need to reinvent the wheel every time and start all over again. We have a very good reference status. We need to build on that and pave our way to a more sustainable future.
Thank you so much, Nico. I couldn't agree more. And when we look at the fact we moved from the Millennium Development Goals to the Sustainable Development Goals, I think we need an upgrade 3, which could be the regenerative development goals, to take Anitra's points about what needs to be regenerated that we've destroyed. And Nico, you made 3 excellent points that I wanted to just emphasize for our audience. First of all, that life below water and life on land are the most off track and underreported. And the Times Higher Education actually does a survey of universities, and we're very proud at ASU to be #1 for life below water with the Bermuda Institute of Ocean Sciences, and in the work that we're doing here in Hawaii. And Anitra, you'll be happy to know that Dr. Greg Asner, who's one of our brilliant scientists, is trying to build the world's largest coral reef restoration facility here. So second, you mentioned enforcement, finance, and political will. And it is really shocking that some 3.5 billion people in developing countries live in countries that are spending more now on debt servicing as a result of the aftermath of the COVID pandemic than they are on health and education. So there is a real critical issue around this. And finally, the war in Ukraine. This is such a tragic reality that in fact it is an ecological crisis and an environmental crisis, as you mentioned. I wanted to raise here the concept of ecocide, which has now been included by the EU as a very real concept alongside of genocide. And so the work that Jojo Mehta and her team have been doing is, I think, very worthwhile. So please, audience, look into ecocide and see if you can bring your support to that as well. Well, it's now my pleasure to move to our third panelist, and this is Dr. Paul Webos, who is really an expert in the scientific world, having spent almost 30 years at the National Science Foundation and now being with the Kummer Institute Center for AI and Autonomous Systems. So, Paul, the floor is yours. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Let me see. Okay. I'm always sorry to be an outlier. I usually am an outlier. When I was doing my thesis, they told me I was crazy because I said we could do things with neural nets that they knew were impossible. Now they're fighting to steal the credit for it. That's why I was in the last panel on AI. Climate is an area where I was very ignorant. This first slide represents what my views were in the beginning of 2009, which was the year of climate in Washington, D.C. I worked at the National Science Foundation. I handled areas like electric power, and they assigned me that year to help in the climate legislation. And I worked in both political parties' decision-making groups on climate. And that was a hell of an experience. At the beginning of that year, my beliefs were like what you see on this slide. I think I've got a YouTube out there on this. On the precautionary principle, I knew the IPCC reports And frankly, climate change didn't seem as bad to me as I thought. The numbers seemed to justify rational economic action, but the numbers did not seem to justify life or death. And after that, starting in 2009, I learned that things are quite a bit different from what I thought. I have a slide here on life on Earth. I think the issue is not something we can repair with the forests. I think the issue is much bigger than that. I think it's very clear that life on Earth itself is in danger. My ability to handle the screens is somewhat in danger, however. There is, maybe I can come back to a slide I have here.
And Paul, while you're finding that slide, I'm just going to echo your words that life on Earth is in danger. And I know when we were negotiating the Sustainable Development Goals back in 2015, I can tell you that I and most of my ambassadorial colleagues at the United Nations did not understand the full import of the science. And this is why I'm now totally convinced that the science to policy interface is a critical one. Beautiful slide.
Now, can you see my graph?
Yes, we can. That looks
great. Okay. Yes. In the year 2009, I established a collaboration. The head of geosciences at NSF introduced me to a guy named Peter Ward. And he said, Peter Ward is the #1 expert, frontline scientific expert on mass extinctions of life in the past. This chart is one of those things. Mm-hmm. There have been several times in the history of the Earth when the level of H2S in the air and the radiation were high enough they would have killed all humans if there had been humans alive. When I heard Peter's talk at NSF, my first meeting, I was amazed when he ended up by saying, by the way, I've looked at these graphs, and the graph we're on right now exactly resembles the graph I have from the historical record. Looks to me, at the rate we're going, we're heading towards the exact same outcome. Everybody dies. At that point, I didn't say he's right or he's wrong. I said, I want to find out. And we have a joint paper posted at a place called buildaworld.org, buildaworld.org. I think I sent you the URL. I have a joint paper with Ward and an expert on ocean currents. And the bottom line is, when we got deeper and deeper into it, it's real. So I'm not here to fix my local beaches. I'm not here to make people happy in the local tropics. I'm here to keep us alive. And I'm really worried about the very life of the human species. So then the next question is, what in the world can we do about it? And for that, I should go back to the slides I did present here. I agree with everybody who says we're not doing enough, but we could be doing more. Okay, so now I hope you got, do you have the climate risk slide?
No, not yet.
Oh dear, okay. Can't help noticing that I actually sent you this slide, but okay. Did it come up?
No.
5-point plan. Okay, so bottom line is we have to ask, what can we do strategically to minimize the probability of human extinction at minimum cost and perhaps at a profit? On my website, werbos.com, there is a URL for climate. And on that website, I offer a 5-point plan. Based on real strategic economics, I argue that there are 5 things we need to do for maximum efficiency. And you don't see the slide. That's really sad. There are 5 critical things that we would be doing if we were rational. And of these 5 things, 3 of them reduce the net CO2. So the first of the 5 is to reduce the net greenhouse gases in electricity generation. And since I ran electric power at the National Science Foundation, I knew a lot about how to do that. And it turns out we have cost-effective opportunities to deeply reduce greenhouse gases from electric power far beyond anything I see the European Union doing or the US today. And the reason for that is we have things called vested interests.
Yes.
There are plenty of people in Europe and the US who make lots and lots of money from high-cost technologies using state power to enforce them. One of the more interesting examples are the people with small nuclear reactors. The small nuclear reactor people, I've met some of the key lobbyists, like from Westinghouse. They want to make the whole world nuclear, and they think they can make money doing that. The only problem is, you look at the Japan Sea, the danger of nuclear war is very serious. And we don't need to, because we have solar power today, which is cheaper.
Yes.
And I sent you the slide on that solar power. I'm really sorry if you don't see it.
WAAS admin, let me just interrupt Paul and see if the WAAS admin can bring it up. Imran, if you are there and you could bring up the slide, that would be great.
Yes, I'm here, but sorry, I don't have slides. Maybe admin have.
Okay, Paul, just keep going, and if we get them towards the end, we can pop them up for you.
Golly. Let me see, maybe what I see on my screen is just my computer. I wish you could see what I see. What can I say? So 2 weeks from now, I'm going to be going back again to Chile. The US and the EU have huge problems. But right at the moment, there's a thing called the Solar Energy Research Consortium of Chile, the National Solar Energy Research Consortium. I've been on their advisory committee for many years. I'm going to be going back in 2 weeks. And I have a beautiful slide showing what they did. They have an advanced kind of solar farm technology. Long ago, when I worked at NSF and the Department of Energy, I thought that simple power tower solar thermal power was a boring lost cause, but then there are breakthroughs. There's a company called Brayton Energy, and it turns out that there's some other companies called Heliogen and General Electric, and those companies now have available commercially a new way to convert heat from the sun into electricity, which gives us costs much superior to this advanced nuclear technology. And they've demonstrated in a large scale in Chile, in the Atacama Desert, where I'm going to be going again in 2 weeks. I've been there many times. And if you combine the best new Brayton Energy conversion technology with the big power tower technology they have demonstrated at scale in Chile. By the way, in the Gulf states, there is also a big solar power tower farm, even bigger than they have in Chile. If you combine that with the new proven Brayton technology in the US, use intelligent control, you end up with something much cheaper than what people are paying for today. People in the European Union would see their electric bills go down, and the whole continent would be more secure if only they would implement this kind of technology. And the main reason they're not implementing it is that the vested interests who speak to the bosses don't want the bosses to know that this option exists. IEEE asked me to lead a study of all of the pieces and of all the new climate options, including this, including others. And I was hoping we would produce a book, but then something happened. What happened is I got a patent for something in the AI area, which was the previous session in this conference. And it turns out that the new AI is important to electric power, but it's important to many other things. And since I was the guy who invented a new quantum technology, I felt a duty to switch. I turned this over to a guy I knew who had run $1 billion project in the US government. And I still haven't seen the book come out, but all the information is there. The information is available to anybody who's interested. They still have these massive solar farms in Chile, combined with proven new technology available from the US for Brayton Energy to convert heat to electricity. You combine them, you reduce the cost of electricity, and you totally get rid of the carbon dioxide.
Fantastic.
There was one last slide in my set, if it ever comes up. As part of that same study, we looked at the possibility of electric airplanes. And there has been a breakthrough in batteries, which makes it possible to build a 777 class airplane, 4,000 kilometer range, all electric. It's another way to totally get rid of the carbon dioxide outputs, and it reduces costs. I've been hoping that Senator Minkowski would learn about this, because Anchorage Airport could be making a huge amount of money by having low-cost electric airplanes flying back and forth to the US and to Asia.
And Paul, you'll be very pleased to know we have electric aircraft already operating in Hawaii, inter-island. So that was just a wonderful tour de force. Thank you very much. I think your key points about reducing the net greenhouse gases and electricity generation, critical. We know that we're still 75% of the greenhouse gases are coming from the power generation sector, yet we know that it is more expensive. So wind and solar are less than 2 cents a kilowatt hour. We know that coal and oil and gas are around 8. We know from the IMF that fossil fuel subsidies are $7.1 trillion a year, 2 trillion in explicit and 5 trillion in implicit. And without those, you're quite right, the vested interests would not be able to continue doing business. So this was such a great tour de force. We know the technologies are available. We know energy security could be heightened by using them. How do we actually address this critical issue of vested interests and help people understand one of the things that came up in the chat, which was mentioned that people think that they have to choose, Alex, between conservation and food on the table. In fact, it's the opposite. If we don't conserve, we are not going to have food on the table. And I think, Ted, life on Earth is in danger is a pretty fabulous tagline, and we will be using that in our LinkedIn post. So thank you so much, all of you. I'm going to come back to you for a 1-minute close. And I'm now delighted to move to our fourth and final panelist, Dr. Ted Manning, President of Tourist Inc., which is a global sustainable development consulting firm. Paul has experience working for the Government of Canada, UN agencies, and small communities on all continents. Thank you for being with us, Ted.
Well, thank you very much. I'm not going to disagree with any of the folks that we've heard, but I am going to say that I think the real problem is people. That we are the cause, and most of us don't even understand it. Secondly, the real emphasis of my talk is to try and convince people that they actually are part of the environment and they might wish to remain part of it. Keeping people alive on Earth, at least some, would be a really good idea. Now, what I'm going to comment, however, is that while the causes of problems appear to be immense and collective, the solutions are almost all local, or at least realized at a local level. They are usually integrated, collective, and they spawn success stories at a relatively local area. The real challenge is communication and to get people to actually understand that they may have applicable solutions, which ultimately can be rolled up and probably required policy changes and very significant economic, social, and other changes. The fact is that most people would like to have another couple of Hummers rather than a tree living in their front yard. And that's the real issue we have. Now, what I would like to do, if I may put one slide on, if it's here, that's it there. This is from a project that we have been doing for several years associated with the Club of Rome and associated with other members of the Club of Rome on well-being. And when we talk sustainable development, most people see these values as being critical to that core. Most are not economic, They are social and related to their environment, related to their society, related to their security, and ultimately to their survival. And I'll just leave that there because that's one of the products of the project we've been doing. And I have personally been over 150 countries doing surveys and work with people to try and identify at a relatively local level what they really want in terms of their community, in terms of the ecosystem they live in, and if they are selling it in terms of its service as a destination or a World Heritage Site, to try and make sure that these attributes are actually sustained. So when we worked to develop the SDGs, this kind of work was behind it to make sure that almost all of them were brought in. And many of the indicators that we had developed for various UN agencies were just the same. Those measurable attributes of what people really wanted to have and obtain from their environment and the communities and economies they built on it. So the logic of this is that virtually everything is delivered locally, that almost every success story we can document, from totally off-grid communities and islands in the Atlantic or the Caribbean, from people's homes that are off-grid and have been for 20 years, from people's approaches to their own lives to create a satisfactory lifestyle for them, their families, and their communities, all fall into the example of very local and hopefully applicable elsewhere. Now, the biggest problem we have is people do not understand risk. And certainly modern society, particularly in the West and in Europe, does not view simply having a nice place to live in, but rather to make a large pile of money. And their priorities, therefore, are exactly why they are not the slightest bit interested in spending a few bucks more for food or even eggs, but rather would demolish something of immense long-term value with no thoughts about it. And certainly the social network is causing them to think that way. They are being programmed all the time as consumers, not as people. And quite frankly, nobody cares if a consumer survives as long as their money does. So I'm looking really at from the point of view of a social scientist as well as a physical scientist, and I'm both, to say if we don't see them together, if we don't integrate them, if we don't understand that the cheapest thing, of course, is not to destroy them, and the next cheapest thing is maybe to try and sustain them or retain them and rehabilitate them, we aren't going to win. And that's really the bottom line. So can we accumulate good success stories from all around the world? Well, yes, we are. Do you want to hear about them? Maybe you don't.
Well, Ted, I think we do want to hear about them. And we have an organization here in Hawaii called the Local 2030 UN Islands Hub, which shares good practices between islands similarly. And the points that you make about the need to bring together the physical and the social sciences are so critical, because we do have the solutions and we know what we need to do. It is a matter of political will and bringing the understanding of the current crisis to politicians to understand we really have a rapidly narrowing window for action.
Well, we have developed a series of workshops around the world, and now a group of observatories of sustainability, many of them on small islands, just to share what works.
Fantastic. Well, Ted, if you could share that in the chat with everybody, a link, I think that would be most welcome for all of our attendees. And thank you, attendees, for the very active participation in the chat and the wonderful comments. So what I would like to do now is turn to each of our panelists in turn for a one-line takeaway. What would you like our audience to take away and remember today? What is their action item from you? So Anitra, starting with you.
Okay. So the first is, can the planet be secure if the ecosystems are not secure? And can we afford to not regenerate the 85% of the ecosystems which have been lost by man's inhumanity to the ecosystems themselves over 3, perhaps 4 millennia?
Thank you. Very powerful. Nico.
My key message would be, we need to realize that we're all in this together, and we need to act together if we want to go somewhere to a sustainable future. The ecosystems, we are a part of the ecosystems. We are not, the ecosystem is not something that is against us, it's opposite to us. We're a part of the ecosystem. If the ecosystems do not survive, we will not survive. We are just the same thing. We're just a part of the system.
Thank you. Paul.
I hope that finally the most important slide got through.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. We had an AI session in the previous hour, and I listed 4 threats to the very existence of humans in this century. This is a unique century. We have powers to kill ourselves that we never had. Climate was number 2 on my list. Number 1 was what we talked about in the past hour, but they're all connected. Strategically, in order to survive, we need to work together and cooperate. We need new networks to cooperate and understand, and above all, to think the right way strategically. And this slide is how I still think about the climate issue. We need people in all 5 sectors. I was really happy when IEEE was going to sponsor an effort to combine all 5 sectors. We have papers on new radical possibilities in all 5 sectors. We don't have that much time now, but there is radically new technology that can really help us in all 5 sectors. We need people who can help. We all have different strengths and weaknesses. We have to specialize, but we have to work together, and we need to do all 5 as intelligently as we can.
Great, thank you. And Ted, the final word to you.
Can I flip a slide on now? I think you may have to unshare so I can share.
So Paul, if you take yours down so Ted can share his.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. I will do that.
Meanwhile, I will simply make my main point, which is we must replace greed and growth now. And if we don't, we are not going to be able to resolve these kinds of issues. As long as we enshrine greed as the prime directive for humanity and ignore all else, society, environment, community, all of the above, we are not likely to be successful. The key questions we've got to look at, and they are all each worth a lecture and examples, are what are the key levers to take all of these examples of success that we can find in places around the world and turn them into more common vernacular and actually application. Why is it important to focus on regeneration, resilience, or improvement, and not just sustainability? Because we don't want necessarily to sustain what we have now. And what are the means of sharing, scaling them up, and using advocacy effectively to the places who really need to learn this stuff? So the next question for all of us is, how do we build an action plan, and who do we have to deal with to make it happen?
Thank you so much. Very rich conversation. And I want to ask the panelists to stay on so that we can get a photograph for social media. Thank you to all of those who participated today so actively and fulsomely in the chat. And what a wonderful note on which to close. We must replace greed and growth now, and let's be working on that next version of the Sustainable Development Goals, the regenerative development goals. Thank you, everybody, so much for these solutions.
Thank you very
So
much.
panelists, if you could stay on board. Imran, could we put everybody on so that we can get a photograph? That would be great. Imran, do you want to come on so we can get you in it too? Great, fantastic. All right, I'm going to get my camera ready. Fabulous. Oh, and I love that statue there. Great. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. Great. Well, thank you very much. That was a really rich discussion. And Imran, thank you for being there as our rapporteur. Some great points. And I will do a little post on social media and copy everybody. Is everybody on LinkedIn?
Yes.
Yes.
No, I'm not. I'm not.
Oh, you're not. Okay. Ted, are you?
Yeah.
Great. And Paul?
Not much, but occasionally. I don't click
Okay,
very
but you've
often.
got a handle. Oh, right. That's great. Well, thank you all very much for the important work that you have been doing and are continuing to do. It's really quite heartening when you come to a session that's focused on solutions and that you can see there are solutions and that very clear message about we've got the answers. It's political will, but it's also willful dis and misinformation. One of the people in the chat said, there's been so much out there telling us we have to choose between food on the table and conservation. And that's so right. We've been told that the only way to growth is by willful destruction of the environment, which is, of course, so wrong. And we're just not valuing the important elements. And now we're a big presence on a small planet, so critical. So thank you all so much for joining. And Imran, thank you. I hope you have all you need for the report back. And I look forward to hopefully crossing paths with all of you brilliant people again.
Yes, we will
Thank
meet
you.
again.
Thank you, Amanda,
Thanks
for the
so much.
coordination. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye,
Have a great
everybody.
day.
Bye.
Bye.